Haha, well now, we call this the act of debating. But there are several very important differences between skeptics and theists that you should still know about. This shirt's too bright. Why am I wearing this against this backdrop? I'm only just now really getting a look at me. Hi, I'm the Godless Engineer. How y'all doing? Oh, I can't even hear John.
That's because I was muted and I was laughing to myself.
Oh.
Yeah.
I've seen if you'd play along.
How you doing, Godless Engineer? Yeah.
I'm good. I'm good. And you are?
I am Jimmy Snow.
Better looking and less annoying. Hey, man. Welcome everybody. This is the Sunday show After Dark. Does everybody say it that way, Arden? They know that's how they're supposed to say it, right?
For sure. Absolutely. Every time.
Okay. Everyone goes, After Dark. I don't know whether or not this is a joke or not when people put it in the chat, or if they know that if they say, OMG, Jimmy, are you on Ozempic? Is it a joke? What is it? At this point, it's like, you guys haven't been around. No, I'm not. I'm not on Ozempic. Has Jimmy lost weight? No. Jimmy is a sickly boy, but one of the nice side effects of his illness over the last 2 years, year, has been dramatic and quick weight loss. Anyway, happy end of Pride. Pride's coming to an end tomorrow. And we're not allowed to be happy to be queer for another year until it's over. Fuck. I know. It sucks. We're only, veterans get a month and a day and a whole, but us queers only got to be just flip it on them. They don't even know that military people get a month though. Anyway. Yes, being gay will be illegal as of Tuesday. Arden, you could have just said that out loud. You think that I'm going to float this by myself?
I'm
queer
sorry.
Representation?
I generally respect the host's ability to carry the show, but it's okay if you don't think you have that ability. I can pick it up.
Oh God. Five, how many years are we into this and you think I can do it? Besides the queer representation, I'm in a heteronormative relationship, so now it's just down to the occasional queer fantasy. We gotta pull out those queer. You are too, actually. We got a couple of.
I was gonna say, someone in chat thought I was straight the other day, and I was like, "Oh my God, I'm so fucking offended! How dare you!"
Oh man, John, did you do anything fun for Pride Month?
Well, I mean, So, I don't know. Yesterday, Marjorie Taylor Greene came to North Alabama, and there was like a protest and a drag show, where the drag queens dressed up as Marjorie Taylor Greene, and did a whole drag show with that. So, I mean, we went there and we saw a little bit of that. We didn't get to see the actual drag show where they came out dressed like Neanderthals, but we went and did that, and got to see like a street preacher with a megaphone that was like, "Repent or burn in hell." But I mean, it's really weird because North Alabama, there was just one lone fuck out there with the megaphone. Like it seemed like it was low numbers.
I went to Taylor, Texas's Pride Festival yesterday, and I put a couple videos on Instagram if people want to see it. By the way, our phone number 720-619-2288. If you believe in God, we'd love to hear why. If you believe that Pride is bad, that we should stop having Pride festivals, if you're sad, when's there going to be a straight history month or whatever, you can call in with those things. But mostly we want to know if you believe in God and why you should do so. 720-619-2288, and we'll have a conversation with you about it. That would be phenomenal. Give us a call. I antagonized a couple of street preachers. I heard somebody years ago say a line to the Westboro Baptist Church people that I have held onto for a long time, just waiting for the day that I would have the opportunity. And so yesterday, as I was passing a person who one side of his sign was about gay marriage and the other side was only 2 genders, the first time I went by, I didn't think like this is the guy. And I actually just did. I didn't even post that one, but I actually said something like, "Are you bummed that neither of them will talk to you or will touch you?" That was the first time. But the second time I went by, much better, to the guy with the double sign. I said, "If you dislike queers so much, why do you hold the sign like that?" And I felt that was my better one. I also enjoyed, there's another guy I antagonized, and I made a video. I was like, I walked up to him as though I was going to do a video with him and was like, "We're out here, members of the Bad PP Club, Little PPs. This guy's our new member, Little PP Club, representing right now." And you could see him trying not to laugh. And then he suddenly got stone-faced. "Repent your sins, repent for your sins." So it was good. It was good. I got to do a little bit of the antagonizings, and it was, I enjoy that. I really do. Deep down in my heart, I do enjoy it. Anyway, what does the poll in chat say right now? What do we got? Can you convert 2 atheists to your religion? Out of 187 people, 1%, which is 1 or 2 of you, think that you can convert us. And I would love to hear it. Now, in fairness, it is a very vague question. I think a larger number of people could convert. Some atheist out there could be converted. But I'd love to talk to whoever said they're going to call in right now, because they are not there. What are Westboro up to these days? They still do shit.
I thought that they were more or less protesting soldiers' funerals now.
But they haven't been able to get attention for it, I assume.
I guess not. Like, it's been a few years since I've heard about them making a big stink. The ones that are still making kind of a big stink are the NIFB.
Yeah. Westboro by another name, essentially. Mm-hmm. I feel like Westboro, Fox News must be like really conflicted, because Fox News originally would cover Westboro stuff back in the day. Like during the Obama years, like they were like, "These guys are too far. They're scumbags." But right now, when it comes to Westboro, they're like, "Oh, what do? We love their Christian fascist nonsense. We like that now. We don't want to disenfranchise," because I feel like they'd be too afraid to cover them and be like, "Look at these pieces of shit," because so much of their audience would be like, "But we like them. Hey, if anybody from Westboro Baptist Church wants to call in and debate, we'll get to calls here in a minute, but I'm trying to line up some calls. We'd love to talk to anybody. Or look, if you're listening right now and you've had a debate this week with a friend or a family member, we all know what's happening. We know it happened during Pride. If it happened during the Pride month, and they're the type where when you are talking to people who kind of know you, they know your buttons, and you might not perform as well, you could tell them right now they can call us and try out their debate skills. Let's find out what they got, if they have anything at all. I suspect they won't, but let's find out. Let's find out if they are as strong and as firm with people they are less familiar with how to manipulate when it comes to the families, for example. I want to hear from you, and I want to hear why you believe in God, why you believe in ghosts, why you believe in the divinity of Jesus Christ, Muhammad, whoever you believe, as long as it's a genuine spiritual, supernatural belief. Or if you are a Christian nationalist and you would like to defend your Christian nationalist views, that would be good too. Let's talk to David in the United Kingdom. David in the
Hello.
United Kingdom, you are, yep, sure do. You are on the line with Jimmy and John, the Godless Engineer.
Hi, thank you for having me. My question is quite simple. I'm not a scientist. I don't really study any of this, but I have discussions about religion with people here. So how would you justify this belief in the supernatural, other than just saying I don't believe in it because there's not enough evidence?
I don't understand why I would need more than I don't believe it because there's not enough evidence.
Because people come to you with like all of these, well, God is real because it says so. God is real because it's in the Bible. God is real because you know it's real.
Well, yeah, but do you recognize those? Do you recognize those as just ad hoc claims? Like they're just ad hoc claiming, which by ad hoc, I mean that it's an unsupported claim. Like they're not actually providing any kind of argumentation or evidence for that. They're just saying, oh, the Bible says God exists, therefore God exists. That's an ad hoc or unjustified sort of claim about God. And I agree with Jimmy. Like you don't need anything really to justify your disbelief in the supernatural other than there's no evidence for the supernatural. Like the people that are claiming that the supernatural exists, they're making the positive claim, and so they have to present evidence. Don't allow people to shift the burden of proof on you to where you have to provide evidence for a negative in this respect, because it's like, you know, you can't show all the evidence that supernatural stuff doesn't happen, right? Because there's always that possibility that supernatural stuff can happen, but you would need to provide evidence to show that that possibility is plausible and that it actually does happen.
David, I guess, David, what definition of disbelief are you using? Because there are lots of things that I hold a disbelief of because I'm simply unaware of them, right? Like whatever the mass of a lead is right now, I don't know it off the top of my head, so I don't believe it's 40 grams per whatever moles or however the whole thing works. Like it's been a long time. I don't. But if somebody just demonstrated to me, or generally, I'm probably going to take the word of a science book in that scenario because it has been so reliable otherwise. However, when corrected or whatever, I'd also be open to the correction, because that's the thing I like about science, is that it seeks to correct itself, unlike other systems of belief which are hostile to corrective forces. But like, what do you mean by disbelief? Simply not holding a belief in it? Or are you saying, how do I justify saying I believe your belief is incorrect or is wrong?
Yeah, probably it's the second one, I think, in some cases, because, for example, the Judeo-Christian God, to me, just doesn't make sense in anything.
So then don't make the claim, I believe you're wrong, unless you do have adequate reasons. But it's okay to say, I don't believe what you're saying, because you also have inadequate reasons. It's sort of the difference between atheism, like weak atheism, and strong atheism. I'm a strong atheist when it comes to most religions. I think that tends to lend itself more toward a general concept of strong atheism. But for the most part, most atheists you're going to find are like the lack theists. They're just like, nobody has demonstrated this well enough to me, so I don't have it. But otherwise, I'm not going to live in what you described, like, it's almost like a modification of the God of the gaps fallacy, where you're like, I don't know enough about physics. I don't know enough about biology. So it's like the God of the personal gaps. But bro, I don't know enough about making a souffle, but I'm not going to say like, well, it's possible that part of a souffle requires magic, right? Because we still understand that everything that has been demonstrated to be true can be done so through scientific means, and can meet skeptical inquiry, and nothing has yet breached out of that otherwise. And so staying consistent with that and going, I suspect everything that is true will need to be able to meet that standard, even if I don't know the specific thing. Like it doesn't make any sense to insert it there just as much as it wouldn't into a recipe for souffle.
Can I ask the opposite question then? So how do I justify belief in something that I don't have enough evidence for either? So, for example, I don't understand the Big Bang well enough. I 100% believe that that's what happened, for example.
Well, I don't think you should 100% believe that's what happened then. I'm not saying you shouldn't believe that's what happened, and I think you should go with, I understand that the best scientific models right now are consistent with the Big Bang, and I understand through reading literature and through these systems that have produced for me the incredible wonders in my life. For example, the technology that we're speaking on right now, and that is a good enough personal evidence base to go, they're pretty good at all of this thing. But to say I 100%, no scientist should 100%. I don't even think a scientist will say 100%. I'm positive the Big Bang is how the universe began, because that's not a type of certainty you should ever speak in. However, all models and everything consistent with the universe as it is now points to a Big Bang being some part of at least the inception of the universe as we know it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and what I would do is I would just be like, well, express some agnosticism on it, I guess maybe a little bit, but basically, how I typically go about it is I'll say, well, I haven't seen any evidence for any kind of supernatural things out there, so I just have to go with the best scientific understanding of, the beginning of the universe or whatever topic you want to talk about. And you can educate yourself on like the brief overview of like at least to the point where you can understand what the Big Bang Theory is, and you can be like, here's the leading hypothesis about the beginning of the universe until something's proved otherwise. That's going to be the best model that we have. And so I typically present sort of a bit, introduce a bit of nuance to the conversation in saying that, I adhere to the scientific theory about this because it's the best one that explains the most amount of what we experience right now. So like that's usually how I caveat the discussion if we get into the nitty-gritty of it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And by the way, like where you are, what kind of discussion you're having matters too. Obviously, if I'm talking in most forms of casual conversation, I'm going to describe things like evolution and the Big Bang as facts, because in as much as we are able to establish anything as facts, we have done so with those things, with those concepts and those theories. When it comes to, if we're then having, especially when we get in these dumb philosophy arguments, again, I can't prove the I'm not a brain in a jar stuff. And to some level, that's where that's even what I'm approaching when it comes to saying not 100% certainty of the Big Bang. It would be more exceptions on the basis of us living in a simulation or a brain in a jar stuff, the non-solved problem of solipsism, than it would be anything like, oh, but it might have been a guy, could have been a dude that did it. But you should only weigh your claims of knowledge to what you actually possess, not what you trust in others to.
Yeah, so the level of certainty in the belief, even in the scientific ones, for me, needs to be tempered somewhat.
Yeah, however, I think you can then also argue on behalf of how good is science and what is the method by which, let's say we found out the Big Bang wasn't the origin of our universe as we know it. What source would you trust to reveal that? There's a reason why it would be an updated scientific understanding that you would be more interested in, and not Todd. Fun fact, there are 0 scientists named Todd. Did you know that? I made that up. Anyway, David, that's anything else before we let you go?
Yeah, thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Cool. You too. Not a single Todd. He's a scientist.
Not a one. I mean, I can verify. I'm an engineer, and I'm verifying there are no Todds. If they say their name's Todd, they're lying. I'm just telling you right now. That's true. It's the Todd conspiracy.
And if you bring to me facts, I will, instead of approaching them, start questioning whether the universe even exists. That's my favorite theistic tactic of like, well, I'm going to go with the option I think second most likely to either God exists, or the second most likely option is the whole universe doesn't even exist at all. That's my favorite. All right. Gary in Florida. Gary in Florida, you are on the line with Jimmy and John. What up, Gary?
Greetings, Jimmy and John. How are you?
Just fine. Have you ever met
all right?
You ever met a scientist named Todd?
Todd. Hold on. Give me a second. No.
All right. Well, so far the theory is holding up.
Well, I've been thinking and contemplating very deeply, Jimmy, about your your program called The Line. The Line.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I've come up with. You're asking most of your callers to cross the line of science and evidence, and then you will believe. Am I correct?
No.
What? Are you saying I'm wrong?
I am.
Oh, okay. That was a guess. That was just a shot in the dark. I'm just having a little fun.
I see.
But I want
If you want the brief correction, I can give it to you.
Oh, go ahead.
So I am open to a method of truth, a method which gets you to truth that is not science, skepticism, evidence-based, as long as one can demonstrate that is also a reliable method of getting to truth. So for example, say we were all shot into this world and we could actually show prayer works in some way, even without explaining the mechanism. We could use prayer to answer mathematical problems that otherwise we couldn't before answer, and actually pray for blessings and see statistically blessings are significant. There is a world in which I would be compelled by this thing I didn't understand because of a demonstration or perhaps some other way of showing that these are reliable methods to get to truth. Now, at the moment, I don't know of better methods. So you would first have to begin there, and then you would have all of your work ahead of you for the claim afterwards. I will say, though, the name of the program, The Line, is very simply because of the phrase, Gary, you're on the line with, you might say the phrase on the line when you are talking to somebody on the phone. That's literally where I came up with the name.
Yeah, I was just trying to be clever, and I didn't accomplish my mission. But
well, I liked
okay,
it.
I heard you. That is kind of interesting. I find it a little puzzling because scientific evidence or scientific verifiable evidence or scientific verifiable demonstration, once you could do that to prayer, okay, well, prayer came up with this unified field theory. Prayer came up with curing a child with AIDS and came up with a solution there. But then wouldn't it fall under evidence and science once you could prove that?
Perhaps, I mean, if you're talking about statistical tracking, the answer, perhaps, but in fairness, I'm not the one who has set the standard that prayer is works and should be demonstrative. It is every religion which has that claim that theirs is the God that listens, and then has no shortage of stories from their pulpits of all the things they've seen prayer do. And yet when it comes to put up or shut up, Gary, I don't know how to meet you somewhere in the middle and go, oh, you're right. It would be kind of scientific to keep score to find out whether or not your team won or not. It's almost like you're calling and representing a baseball league and you'd like to get rid of scores completely and just see who defends with their words which teams won the most, even though there actually was some team that got the most home runs or whatever. I don't really watch sports, so this metaphor may have fell apart to me.
Yeah. No. I got you. I got it. And I agree with you. I agree. It would be kind of silly. Yeah, no. Well, okay. So I was just trying to understand what you meant by that with the prayer business, because I was kind of surprised to hear that. Now, I'm listed on your program as a theist, but I'm a rather strange one because I'm not a Christian, not a Jew, not an Islam, none of that stuff. I just believe that there's some kind of a transcendental truth or reality, and that's about it. Okay. But basically, you're saying that you need scientific verifiable evidence and scientific verifiable demonstration in order to believe in a God. That's the basic bottom line. The buck stops there. Then I'll believe something, right?
I feel I've said I don't know of a better way, but I don't. That doesn't mean that there isn't something better that could be presented.
Wow.
Right, and
Wow.
Gary, the way that I see it is that science is a tool that we use to reveal the truth of reality. Like it's the best tool that we have that provides us with information or a view of reality that comports to how reality actually exists in the best way that we can, given the information that we have. So I mean that's why having empirical evidence to back up, like to justify your beliefs, I think is important, because that means that we have real tangible evidence that justifies why we believe in something. If something doesn't have this kind of empirical evidence to justify it existing, or as comporting with reality, then I just don't see how it's beneficial to somebody to believe in something that you can't actually verify even exists in reality. Do you think that there's some kind of pragmatic reason to believe in something you can't actually prove exists in reality?
The pragmatic reason may be a little bit too idiosyncratic for the scientific means and process. In other words, let's say that psychologically, and that kind of pragmatism, there's an emotional, psychological pragmatism for the person to believe in some kind of transcendental truth or reality, because it grounds them, it focuses them, it centers them in a line of thought that gives focus to their lives, gives purpose to their lives, gives meaning to their lives.
Hey, Gary, can I ask, how do you know that transcendental truth is? But because I take it when you say transcendental, you mean some kind of absolute truth. Would that be an accurate way to interpret that?
Well, absolute insofar as it transcends it's something that is more solid.
Right.
Gosh,
it's unchanging, right? It's immutable.
Yeah. That's it.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, I would use the word absolute for that. Immutable, just meaning unchanging. My question, and this is the problem that I have with anybody that claims to have the absolute or immutable truth, is how do you know that is the absolute or immutable truth?
And I have no science and demonstration for that. I have none for that. Like I said, that's why I said it's idiosyncratic, based upon one's psychology and emotions that they adopt. They choose to have some kind of transcendental position for.
Right. But you keep using that word transcendental. I feel like if something is transcendental or absolute or immutable, then it's not going to be as personal as you're making it out to be. Because it kind of seems like you're saying, oh, these transcendental things are personal to the person, and just because they believe in something that they think transcends, then that means that it actually does transcend, or is actually absolute. Like, I guess I'll go back to what I asked before. Do you think that it's really all that pragmatic to believe in things that don't comport with reality?
That's a good question. I have my listening ears on, and I'm trying to focus on that. John, I'm going to be honest. This is the only thing I know in my life, is I've always had or adopted something immutable. I don't know exactly how to scientifically define that or demonstrate that. It's more psychological and emotional. So no, I'm agreeing. I'm straining here. I'm not answering your question, and I do apologize for that. But I recognize I'm not answering your question. I'm just trying to trying to do the best I can here. I don't know anything else. I don't know what to tell you. I cannot prove it. I cannot demonstrate it. I don't know what to do.
Well, so I guess what I'm trying to get at here, Gary, is that if you can't demonstrate or prove that whatever, but because you're being very vague about what this transcendental truth is, could you, maybe it would help me out if you could like make some kind of solid claim or solid statement that you think is transcendentally true.
Okay. All right. Sure. That's good. Solid. Thanks for your patience too. Ralph Waldo Emerson. He was a 19th century transcendentalist philosopher. You may have heard of him. So basically, he posited that there is some kind of metaphysical basis. Meta meaning beyond physical. Okay. Metaphysical, philosophical basis for life. There is a you know what?
Sorry, are you trying to say? Yeah, are you trying to say that there's some kind of like ultimate or transcendental meaning or reason for life to exist?
You know what? I think psychologically and emotionally, you're right. I think you got me there. I think, I think you got me. Yeah. Okay. You know
okay.
what?
I mean, is that, sorry, I wasn't trying to get a gotcha. I was just trying to make sure that I understood what you were trying to say. Like there's a transcendental or absolute or immutable meaning or purpose to life. Is that what you're like? There's some grander purpose.
Yeah, there's grander purpose, and yet I feel conflicted, John, because I don't believe that this universe has any moral purpose. That's why I'm hesitating here. I don't believe that there's any moral purpose to this universe. Nevertheless, I believe that there's a metaphysical purpose, but many people will jump the gun and say, oh, you think that's going to dictate how you should live and that there's morality and ethics? No, I don't believe
let's forget
any
about
of
those
that.
many people. Let's not forget about those many people. And I think I just want to start cutting to some meat here, or finding out whether or not if it's sort of an ill-defined, like I can't let it go, but it doesn't have much definition, but it's there and nothing's going to change it. Then, respectfully, we'd move on. Gary, what is it that you believe is the metaphysical purpose of the universe? Put most simply, please.
To realize the true nature of the universe and to realize the true nature of your life.
Okay, so you believe our individual purpose is tied up with a metaphysical purpose to realize our own purpose, is what you're sort of saying?
Yes. Okay. I believe ultimately, to answer your question, yes, to realize the true nature of your own life and the true nature of the universe.
Okay, great. I find that to be incredibly silly, since most human life that ever was, if you want to call any sort of conception the beginning of human life, we know the pro-lifers do. I believe it is statistically the case that most humans never even made it to birth. And then also mortality rates have been horrible over the last several centuries. And so it seems that actually a lot of human life and other lives have been to just suffer and then puff out of the universe, whatever. We could get into the depths of that. I think you've already admitted that is your belief, but you don't necessarily have a good reason or demonstrable belief for it. So I guess I have, is anything within your line of supernatural metaphysical beliefs, do you have a good reason that John or I or anybody else watching should believe it?
No.
Then I think respectfully, we should just leave it here and go, because as far as if you've, unless this is your first time watching the channel, I don't think we're going to introduce you to the idea of, if you don't have a good enough reason for somebody else to believe it, you probably don't have a good enough reason for you to believe it. And so it doesn't sound like whether or not John or I believe in it is going to condemn us to hell. It doesn't even sound like it's going to change yours or our interaction with whether or not we would take medication or vaccines, or does your metaphysical belief in any way affect your political leanings?
Hell no.
Then I don't think it's just that. Like, you seem great, and we could probably get high and have fun someday. But otherwise, the purpose of this show and calls, I just don't know where to go from here. Is that fair, Gary?
No. That's fair. I suppose I just okay. No, that is fair. But can I have a quick other question?
Go for it.
Okay. Atheism, the atheistic stance, what you just stated, very succinctly, solid, no problem. Do you think that as humanity advances and sheds the skin of religious doctrines, belief systems, formulas, and we move into a more secular, atheistic humanity, do you believe that this will necessarily lead to a better world?
In your current phrasing, no, because I think what you're describing as my atheist expanse was actually me touching more on skepticism and humanism. I said this recently on a show. I think in watching the way people, even in the quote unquote atheist community, have divided over the last 5 years, my suspicion is if we went radically to a more atheist world without making sure we were bringing humanism and skepticism along for the ride, and not in name only, but in fact, in practice, that we would probably have a world that would just trade in religious separation for something else. I think that you would see dramatic increases in types of tribalism, whether it's between different ethnicities, races, genders, or political ideologies as they are. So I don't think atheism by itself solves that problem, which is why I don't actually much care anymore and haven't for some time. It is a higher priority of me. If we get the whole world to humanist, then will my sole interest be deconverting people from their religious-based humanism to secular humanism. However, as a secular humanist myself, it is the best way I know how to present, and the number one thing we are battling as humanists is religion. So the sort of side effect of that all is that I am going to be presenting a way of thinking that is based in atheism.
Yes. No, that's very well articulated. I always enjoy you explaining
based
things.
From atheism, and isn't correct. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, that was my point. You got to my point, because I see conflict within the atheist group, within Republicans, Democrats, political, non-religious. I hear just this internal conflicts. The transgender community has conflicts within it. Everything is conflicted. Humanism, think about Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins was a member of the humanism, and they kicked him out because of his
Gary,
views on trans.
There are other theists that I want to get to. So just to put a bow on what I think you're already saying, I also said recently, and somebody in comments tried to give me shit for it, I suspect if you got all of the atheists in a convention center for me, every single one of them, the number of them that I would think were adequately skeptical and demonstrably humanist would be less than 10%. I think that we here at this channel are good at collaborating with, and I think the person who was trying to take me to task for it in comments was trying to suggest that I was saying 90% of any group, as in even at the line, I am better than 90% of, but whatever. People are going to be bad at commenting no matter what you do. Yes, there is going to be, and by the way, I'm a humanist that will never meet the perfect level of humanism. As I've said before, I think in a humanistic world, even with bad people, if my dog and Ben Shapiro were both drowning in a pool and I only have time to save one of them, it is probably the correct from the humanistic stance to save the life of Ben Shapiro and to hope that that ends in his rehabilitation and him being able to improve the lives of others despite all of that, and that we should even qualify human life in somewhat of a speciesist way as more precious than the animal that dogs, shorter lifespans, the number of people, potential to impact, and all that sort of stuff. That I would think that the humanist choice would be to save Ben Shapiro, and yet I also feel, as a humanist, I would fail in that moment to meet that standard of humanism. So, sorry, sorry, Ben.
Sorry, Ben. And I believe me, I feel your pain when you had to make that decision. I feel your pain.
Well,
listen,
I haven't had to.
I want to.
Luckily, yeah. Go ahead, Gary. If you can wrap up, maybe 30 more seconds there.
Okay. I was thinking of. Okay, let me just. This was a good conversation because I appreciate you guys, what you do there with the line, and I'd like to just end with a joke. Can I end with a quick joke?
Very quickly, yes, please.
Okay. Why didn't the mummy have any friends?
Why not?
Well, he's just too wrapped up in himself.
Ah, lovely. Thank you, Gary. Forrest would have loved it. Thanks, Gary.
Okay, thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
All right.
I think Erica might have appreciated that.
Is she also into dad jokes?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's a dad joke, but I feel like it borders on being a bit punny, and she hates those.
Oh, got it. Whereas Forrest would have literally said something like, "You son of a bitch, I love it," something like that. He would have said, I love it so much, and then he would have said one back. Let's see. Hey, Menard, who said, I wish these atheist channels applied the same logic they apply to discredit theists to the trans ideology. You could call in and challenge us with it, or you could call in on Thursday and see if you can go toe-to-toe with experts in the field and talk to actual trans people themselves. Because guess what? I used to disagree with what you would call trans ideology. It is actually applying skepticism and scientific understanding that brought me around to it. Not only that brought me around to accepting that a person might be born a male and believe they are a woman and be correct about that, and vice versa, but actually even then the expansion into a gender spectrum, non-binary folk, even using other pronouns, all as a result of applying that same, as you used the term, logic. So Menard, I wish you would use that logic, and maybe you should call in and talk to us or the people it most directly affects about it sometime. It would be kind of funny if you talk to us, because then if we don't make amazing points, our producer is a trans woman who will be behind the scenes just being like, oh my God, why aren't you saying, dude, Jimmy, you know this. Anyway,
that is exactly what would happen too. That's usually what happens.
You know that there have been shows where I can feel that you're seething and I invite you on because I'm like, all right, Arden, go ahead. Go ahead.
Good. I'm glad I give off that energy without even having to say anything.
Yeah. All right, let's find out what Aleph has to say. Aleph, pronouns he, they in Ohio, is a theist, and I'm very interested in the phrasing of the notes here. I must have it mistaken. So Aleph, what do you have for us?
Just that by arguing that you want to change what someone believes, you're intrinsically wasting their time. It doesn't matter if they're a theist or an atheist. If it's a belief system, then that's just something that will simply adjust with time as they become a better or worse person. If you want to claim that by believing in a specific deity will cause a person to change, we actually have. I'm just going to point out to the entire world that that's literally not true in any shape or form.
Aleph, if somebody thinks that it's immoral to be part of the LGBTQ community, you think that it's pointless to try to change their mind about that?
Yes, because they're usually idiots. It's the same
Aleph,
reason that
Aleph,
if you said,
Aleph,
well, why
have you
is
watched
this
the show a
immoral,
lot?
they
Hang on,
won't
Aleph,
argue
Aleph,
against
hang on.
tattoos.
Hang on, Aleph.
Yes,
Oh
it's
man,
Aleph.
my Echo thinks that your name is her name, and she's not connected to the internet, so she's reading off a paragraph. Aleph, do you think that I'm an idiot? Personally, like, it's okay if you do. I'm not going to hang up on you if you say yes. Do you think I, Jimmy Snow, am an idiot?
If you have irrational beliefs that you treat as facts, then yes.
No. I'm saying, have you seen this show? Are you familiar with me enough to know whether or not I'm an idiot?
No, I've never actually seen you before. I remember seeing Matt Dillahunty, but that was about 10 years ago.
Well, here's the thing. I don't think I'm an idiot. And I think most of our audience would jokingly say I am, but probably don't think I'm an idiot. And I used to have anti-queer sentiment and beliefs. And it was, in fact, challenges to that anti-queer sentiment and belief. Because it's funny. You're describing this almost like an isolationist idea that you're going to seek to be a better person, but better is going to be relative. So first we'd have to define by what standard, and that you're going to expose yourself and seek out the knowledge that and yet we know human nature is nothing like that we actually seek to affirm that which we already believe and to maintain our sense of community, and that it's actually one of the more difficult things is to break free, just whether you are intellectual or not. And my own breaking free of those things, yes, obviously, an individual is who changes their mind. You can't actually change the mind of somebody else, but the journey along the way is certainly something that people can influence. And so my own change, and the fact that we have this channel and that you're able to speak to me right now, and that we have inboxes filled with people telling us, and just for fun, before this call came on, I actually polled the chat and basically asked whether or not this channel assisted them in deconverting from a religion, which I assume is still within that category of trying to change a person's mind. And the number is about what I thought. It kind of keeps fluctuating. Somewhere between 17 to 23% are saying that, yes, this channel directly assisted them. And then a larger number of about 80% say that they had actually already lost their faith before they found the channel. I wonder if they feel, though, their time is now being wasted here to listen to us have those discussions. And then 3% saying they still have faith. So I think on every single level, I disagree with you that having conversations with people, both privately or before an audience, is a waste of people's time if it has the ability to affect change in a direction, either on a small level or a large level.
You're done? Awesome. I actually don't recall what your question was.
Well, Aleph, I have to say, this has been an absolute delight. Are you a theist?
Yes, Jewish, actually.
You believe, but you believe in the Jewish God? Hmm?
I believe in God. It's a singular being.
Okay.
It's a singular being.
Why?
But you believe in the Abrahamic God.
Sorry, am I using your words or my words? I know there's a God. That's actually what the commandment says. It's not a belief structure.
Mm. And why? What do you feel?
I'm non-binary, and that I know that I'm black.
No, neither of those things. Neither of those things would be the same thing at all, actually, because you're describing characteristics of yourself that actually can be ascertained, and then you are describing something external to yourself. And knowledge, especially when describing something external to yourself, to call something a knowledge versus a belief, knowledge is obviously a subset of belief, suggests that you have verifiable reasoning, that it is actually something you could demonstrate to be truth, and it isn't simply something that you just believe in the depths of your heart.
No, I don't believe in the depths of my heart. My heart doesn't have that function.
Yes, you understand what Aleph, except for I'm also autistic, and you understand what a colloquialism is, and you actually arrogantly responded clearly understanding the colloquialism.
I was being arrogant to you because I've corrected your pronunciation of my name at least 10 times.
I'm sorry, I actually haven't heard. John, did you hear the correction? I haven't heard it once.
You've never heard of the letter Aleph.
I have
literally the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It's literally
great.
the precursor of
And
the Latin alphabet.
Aleph, guess who isn't a Hebrew or a Jew here between the two of us? Myself.
You've never heard of these letters or these languages like Latin?
Aleph, do you think this is actually a functionally beneficial? First of all, do you think that for anybody listening, they're like, you know who seems like a reasonable, great person to talk to?
Time.
Aleph, Aleph, I think the only person wasting
time. I'm even
Aleph,
doing it now
Aleph, could I finish a sentence? Aleph, could I finish a sentence?
No, because you literally went on for about 4 minutes and pretty much kind of meandered.
Actually, I can finish any sentence I want because I control whether or not your audio is put forward onto this. So I was asking to politely finish the sentence, but it's funny that you say I went on for 4 minutes meandering. How well do you think you could summarize my quote unquote form? Oh, and Aleph has left. Aleph has rage quit because Aleph has not gotten, and by the way, I've now said his name perfectly several times, did not hear an alleged. Did you hear a single time that he corrected my pronunciation? Did I just miss it? Was I talking? What was? No, it's okay if you heard it.
I mean, no, I didn't hear it, but maybe he said it while, maybe he was trying to interrupt while we were talking, and obviously we didn't hear it. So I don't know.
So what are the odds he actually said it 10 times and we didn't hear it? Because he said it was 10 times.
I definitely didn't hear it 10 times, like a possible 10 times. Like maybe once or twice it might have said something.
Aleph, I'm terribly, and maybe you should call back and let me know. I'm terribly wondrous in this moment as an autistic person who has to arrogantly not engage with a colloquialism. Well, as a person who has to be such a literal autist, such as myself, if your point was so strong, why did you rely on hyperbole to make it? I am astounded. Why be so hyperbolic? Why not be actually literal? Why be so hyperbolic about the 4 minutes that I went on for? Why, if your points are so strong, be hyperbolic? He spent the whole time Jimmy was talking correcting Jimmy on his name. Well, if he did, his mic wasn't on. If you guys heard it, I don't know how you would have heard it, and I didn't though, because I have the master feed. That was fun. And nobody has, it's funny when they're calling in to describe how you are wasting people's time. And then you do speak to them and then they say, are you done? Only to indicate that they weren't listening, that they basically zoned out and were just waiting for the silence. But then they don't even have the courtesy to wait for you to respond, whether or not you were done. They said, okay, good. To tell you the truth, for his whole non-engaging with the colloquialism and then defending that it has to do with his autism, which, I'm going to take Aleph's word for it. But the fact of the matter is as soon as a person wants to introduce every label of identity they can, it almost seems like they're doing so as a sword. And I had a wonderful time talking to Aleph, not Aleph, Aleph, I've already forgotten because I'm not familiar with Hebrew, the Black Hebrew non-binary who knows there is a God. And what was there was another identifier, and autistic Black, non-binary. And all of those were very, very important to include in this discussion about whether or not God exists. So before we get on to our next call, do I let the next caller know that I do have a freckle on my anus? Because it does identify me, and will that be important to the next call? That's the question.
I don't know. Why don't you try and see?
Yeah. William, I don't think you could possibly be more insufferable than our last caller. So William, you are on the line with Jimmy and John. Please don't take that as a challenge. You are calling as a theist who is starting off with a buzzword that I usually see as a giant red flag, but I'll see what you got.
Yeah, I hate when people talk about quantum physics because it's so mysterious. Oh, by the way, John, we've talked a little bit before about did Jesus exist, and I wanted to have a little debate with you, but you had a poker tournament. How did you do at the poker tournament?
Oh, I never do well at the poker tournaments. I don't think that I made it in the money. I doubt that I did. I don't remember when it was, but a very tumultuous time for me this particular season. I'm hoping that the fall season is going to be better for me.
I tell you, I was a failed apocalyptic poker player, and I was in Vegas at the one of the poker rooms. The guy goes, "There's like 50 people." He goes, "I can count on my hand the number of people at Make Clinic." Apparently, 85% of the people lose at poker. It's just remarkable. It's a great example of the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Excellent. I'm going to beg you to move on now. Thank you.
But anyway, let's start with the fine structure constant. Richard Feynman, the great physicist, said every physicist should put this number, which is 1 over 137, on a board and worry. Are you guys worried?
No.
Okay.
Worried about what?
I mean, the statement was that every physicist should do it. So already I am excluded from the desire to worry.
Well, I was an atheist a few weeks ago. I've just converted to theism. And a lot of it is because of this.
No one's perfect.
Yeah,
That's a tease.
I mean, it feels weird, believe me. But things like this fine structure constant, if it's 4% off, you don't get chemistry, you don't get carbon. And actually,
as we know it,
carbon.
But
we don't get those
William,
things as we know them.
Yeah, for one, as we know them, but also, what if it's just 3% off? What if it's 3.9999 repeating off like that? So, what if it's 2.98 repeating off, or 2.987565434556 whatever in the fuck percent off? Like, you understand how like there's an infinite amount of numbers in which we could pull out here for it to be off by and still get chemistry. So. I guess,
and we don't know what number of samples we get to apply it to. It's literally like 4% is a crazy high number. I'm like, give me something that's like 0.000 freckle on the ass 0.001% chance. And have I lost signal? I seem to be frozen.
No. I'm just listening. Here's another one. This is the one that really threw me for a loop. Have you heard of the strong force constant? You know, there's 4 forces in there.
The strong and weak nuclear forces.
Yes, the strong.
I think something's gone wrong.
Force.
Okay.
All right, can you not hear me?
No.
Can people hear me?
Yes,
we can all hear you, and everyone else can hear each other, Jimmy. So something's, I don't know what's wrong.
Do I look okay?
Yes. Can you hear me?
All right, hang on one second. Let me hit the recap.
That happened to me a second ago too.
Very strange.
All right, are we back? I think I'm good. For some reason I had to reconnect.
Okay.
Just my side was being crazy. Yeah, I do.
Right.
We don't know what the sample size numbers are either, and so we also don't know about. All we know is that we're here and we're observing a universe that we're in. So our universe apparently can meet whatever it needs to meet for us to exist, but we don't know if other universes exist and then how many there are. So whatever infinitely small percentage number you might be able to come up with, I don't know that there aren't that many attempts at universes out there, or that we aren't in a cycle of attempts and it wasn't until one of the things that would have we don't know any of these things. So people have been trying to make these like, oh my goodness, here's a small percentage likelihood number. And they're reading it after the fact as though you're starting from nothing and you want to eventually hit that. And whatever odds number you can literally write on a piece of paper and come up with something yourself, that the chances of you coming up with that number will be less than the chances of any of these other things you'll present. And yet that number will be on the page.
Right. Now, the two physicists that have converted to me, Luke Barnes and Michael Strauss. Let me just go through this real quick with the strong nuclear force. If it's 2% stronger, then you get the periodic table, but you don't get hydrogen. And if hydrogen's not there, obviously stars won't burn. You won't get the carbon from the supernova explosion. If it's 5% weaker, you don't get the periodic table. You just get hydrogen protons just bumping into each other. So
hey, William. But William, if the freckle on Jimmy's ass isn't in the exact spot, hydrogen doesn't form. Did you know that?
Or you might think it's my dad. That's where his freckle is. Like the thing that's very frustrating about what I just told you, William, is you then proceeded to continue with a line of statements as though I hadn't just said why these aren't compelling.
No.
This isn't compelling information.
That is an excellent apologetic, and totally, I'm with you 100%. And other people have used the multiverse as a good explanation. This is just me personally.
Hold on. We're not using the multiverse though. So
literally, we're describing the gaps, and that we're not saying therefore God like you are.
Right, and I respect that. It's just, let me ask you the question. Okay, you have this strong nuclear force where you have quarks within the protons and neutrons. These quarks have to be held together by gluons. And you have the, obviously the quarks are positive, so the protons are positive, so they're repelling each other. So my question is, how does this strong nuclear force come about by chance? That's what really threw me.
What does the word chance even mean? We literally use, okay, first of all, demonstrate that we're not in a deterministic universe. Because if we're not, there's nothing by chance. I don't believe in chance. As far as like, at least I have no idea if chance existed before the universe, but look within the universe. What escapes some sort of biological or chemical or physical process? Truly, like even us making a decision, we now know that neurons and things firing in your brain and stuff, you actually make the decision before you acknowledge that you've made the decision, that these are things that are all following. So when you say chance, you're saying unlikely from a base set. Meanwhile, everything which does actually happen actually had a 100% chance of happening. The only thing of like, if you spun a thing and you spin the wheel and there's 100 slots on it, sure, from the outside you go with 100 slots, that means you have a 1% chance on landing in a particular number. However, from the universe's computer that knows everything's perspective, if you put your hand at this location, spin with this amount of force on a planet with this amount of gravity, with this, literally that percentage of if you're aiming for the number 5 gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until it is 100% because you know every factor going into it. Chance, when you say these things happening by chance, I don't know. For all I know, there is a multiverse with infinite number of universes, and yet they are all the exact same as ours and have all the same chemistry and all. They have you and me and the freckles in the same damn place. We don't know any of these things because you're describing chance when chance doesn't in any practical way exist unless somehow quantum particles truly exist via chance, which does not seem to actually be the product of science. But whenever people bring up quantum physics, this is where these kinds of bullshit things come in. Chance doesn't actually in any reasonable way exist. So when you're saying chance, you're saying with all of the factors that I understand, this would only happen as long as you don't deviate from this number of percentage. But what are the quote unquote chances it would deviate? Well, we know in our universe, if you have all of the information, it's 0%. But we don't know what all of that information is to actually make that case. So we're only using it with the limited information we have. The concept of chance isn't a real, it's a human thing that we like because we don't know. And yet if you were an adequate robot, you could walk up to any, you guys were talking about gambling, going to a casino, any of those things where you have to spin it, and you could always land on the same thing you wanted to every single time.
Right. I think a good principle for you to sort of, I guess ponder on this topic would be the weak anthropic principle. The best example of that is Douglas Adams' puddle analogy. Have you heard of that?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, like we're
just perfect for me. Isn't it just a beautiful puddle? It just was made for me.
Right.
Of course.
Yeah. So the fact that we are here to even question like the weak and nuclear forces and all this other stuff, I mean, that's basically life that has been shaped by the universe that it exists within, questioning why that universe has to exist that way and thinking that the universe was fine-tuned for, you know, that particular kind of life, when in reality life is shaped by the universe that it develops in. Now I'm wondering, as another example of what Jimmy was just talking about here as far as chance goes, um uh can you actually tell me, like, if infinity is greater than infinity? Like there is nuance here. Well, there is nuance here in like large infinities versus small infinities, but like when we're comparing these numbers, as I said before, there's an infinite amount of numbers that could be contained within that 4% that you're talking about. Just like there's also an infinite amount of numbers, amount of values that in the entire spectrum that it could be that the weakened nuclear forces could be comprised of. But I guess what I'm trying to look at is like, well, we're really just comparing one infinity to another infinity, you know, and I just don't see a big difference. But like I get that you're trying to make the 4% be like, or whatever numbers for the weakened nuclear forces. You're trying to use those small numbers, that small little wiggle room that it has, to be like, oh, it's improbable that it would have, come about by quote unquote chance. But really what you're doing is comparing one infinity to another infinity.
Well, that could be. It's just, here's my problem, and it's kind of a universal problem. It's called the layman's dilemma. To really understand the existence of God, you really need to understand geology, biology, physics, chemistry, Hebrew, Greek. It just, so many things impact this question.
Which God?
Well, how about the Yahweh, God of the Bible?
Well, the God of the Bible does not ask. In fact, the God of the Bible says quite to the contrary in multiple places, that he's giving, you lack wisdom, he will give it to you liberally and withholdeth not. So the God of the Bible, if you're going to believe in the God of the Bible, that it's that hard to get an understanding that the God of the Bible exists, and yet this alleged God is saying it's actually super duper easy. Is Yahweh the God you've adopted?
No. I mean, obviously, the Bible is very problematic with the genocide and fanicidal, God of the Bible.
Do you believe if there was adequate reason to believe in God, people who work at this channel on this debate, like, and we were aware of it, it could be articulated to us, that we would, are there hosts here that you think would just be like, no, fuck that, I'm still not going to believe it because I don't want to believe it? Or do you think that, I'm mostly asking, do you trust the lineup of hosts we have here, that their skepticism is consistent and given an adequate reason, they would believe?
Well, absolutely, but let me give you one better. Sean Carroll, who is an atheist.
I'd really rather go my way than your better way. We can do yours after mine, but I'd really rather go with mine. I'm curious.
I'm sure your hosts, I just talked to one, are very skeptical, very well, read and so forth. And yes, they.
So I'm curious why you would make an appeal to quantum physics as a thing that is the thing that it seems to have converted you to theism. Acknowledge that you believe that we're consistent here, and given good enough reason we would, and that are you not aware we have an actual PhD physicist on staff that you could call and go, hey, is this not good enough reason? And if you are correct, you're going to get the guy, you're going to convert him on the spot. I trust him. Do you know who Dr. Aaron Adair is? Why not call the physicist about the point with your quantum physics? Well, why not call him?
No, great point. And I would love to do that. But here's the other thing that bothers me is the DNA enigma. You have the nucleotides on the bases. It's not the chemical makeup of the adenine, guanine, cytosine, those nucleotides. It's the arrangement. It's the information in the DNA molecule that determines the assembly of proteins. So again, what's the likelihood that would
100%.
evolve by chance?
100% is the likelihood. And that not only is that not, now we're getting into like some of the stuff I went to college for, but again, Tomorrow, you can call an evolutionary biologist who's a couple masters and I think on their way to a PhD in at this point, and you could have that exact same conversation with them. But the odds are literally 100% because what you are describing right now is what looks very complex and incredible. Some of the beauty to it is that it is actually so simple that we can use just these 4 letters in repetition to describe all of them, but is also coming from billions of years. And it's wild that that people are sitting here going and thinking like, even if you only added 1 grain of sand, every 1,000 years, after billions of years, you've built a castle. I hope that's true. Someone's going to go do the math and be like, it'd be a small castle, but anyway, it's not that impressive of a thing to anybody if you actually can grasp the concept of 3.5 billion years, which in a literal sense is impossible, but you can do the math and go, yeah, that's pretty incredible. And it's great that we have this, but it didn't, when you say poof into existence, you didn't say poof, but when you say by chance, chance is literally not how it happened. Chemistry is literally how it happened. Like the laws the molecules are following are physics, and biology is a description of how what the products of those things together have done. And there is no chance. And it actually isn't that much more impressive that rocks in space are for the most part staying together instead of just blowing off into whatever. Everything has that level of, wow, it's crazy that works. We're here alive to observe it because it works. And as John already mentioned, you're still saying, I'm really impressed that as water, I fit into this puddle hole. And so God must exist, even though you have no frame of reference of other puddle holes around you, if there are any puddle holes around you, of whether or not there was ever another type of shape a puddle hole could be. Maybe there isn't. Maybe all puddle holes, in the respect to our metaphor here, have to all be the same shape, but we simply don't know. And to go from atheist to theist means you are now making a belief claim in something that you are demonstrating you definitely don't know.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I'm behind the gun. And this doesn't, once you become a theist, it doesn't answer all the questions. For example, the first prokaryotic cell without a nucleus came about 3.5 billion years ago. It takes a billion years, 2.5 to 2.5 million years, to get the first eukaryotic cell with a nucleus. So my question to my fellow theists now is, why would God take a billion years to get a nucleus in a cell? You guys got an answer?
How would I answer a question that starts with why with God as an atheist?
Well, I mean, put yourself in their position, because they've never given me an answer.
Because I really want to bang my sister. I don't know. Like, that seems to be as consistent as a theistic response as any of the others.
Well, I guess trying to
go ahead.
Well, I guess trying to do an internal critique of, let's say, Christianity. You would think that an omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient God that is unrestricted by anything would just be able to snap his fingers and like create stuff, which is why the Bible starts out with God speaking, stuff into existence like an incantation. So, I mean, if you're asking, I feel like asking 2 atheists, hey, why didn't God do a thing? We're just going to be like, yeah, why didn't he do that thing? He could have easily done that thing. So it makes no sense for God to have to need evolution and billions of years in order for that thing to happen. It makes sense if God would just snap his fingers and twiddle his dick in order for it to come into existence. Like, I mean, that's, I guess my entire point in this is that it's pointless.
The story would have been more believable if I'm not saying you lied about the story, but the story to me, I was more predicting was going to go, or should have gone like, so I asked my fellow theists this, but then they figured out I was an imposter and only pretending to be a theist because asking such a challenging question is not something we do of ourselves.
Well, it's just in like the Cambrian 540 million years ago, where all the major phyla of the chordates, the echinoderms, just kind of suddenly appear. And I know there's Ediacaran precursors and so forth, but still, you get some major phyla just kind of suddenly appearing.
Suddenly on scales of
largest-
millions of years is not quite suddenly. Suddenly, as we're looking
Exactly.
back at
No, that's a
against
good
a
point.
cosmic calendar.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Tim,
and I just
you're
want to point
exactly
out,
right, yeah.
I just want to point out that whole thing being like amazing or whatnot would also have to entail like there just being no fossils previous to that, and then it's like boom, fossils. I mean, we could still explain that, but I mean, there are fossils that predate the Cambrian explosion, and the fact that fossils,
yeah.
right,
Yeah, the Ediacaran, sure.
but what I'm saying is that for your point to carry more weight and to be more convincing, I feel like there would just have to be like no fossils, and then it's like boom, full ass body plans and all this other stuff. Like that's normally how it's presented, and that's just not what happens or what has happened. But also, like fossils are incredibly hard to make, and when you're talking about body plans that are not exactly conducive, to making fossils, you're going to have a hard time finding fossils for those kind of things, especially the farther back you go.
You're absolutely right, John. And another question, just bear with me, is I asked Foz with reasons to believe, Hugh Ross's big thing. I said, if man is the crowning achievement of God's plan, why in the world did he wait till 99% of the time is gone? I mean, because the first Homo sapien was a couple 100,000 years ago.
I want your challenges to us. I don't want to hear how you're challenging other theists when you're sitting there going like, but those are the guys I agree with. This is
what I'm saying.
Like, yes, good question to ask them, because it seems really stupid with a lot of that knowledge to sit there and go, I think there's probably a guy, and but by the way, he cares if you touch yourself. So what I want to know is, maybe you don't believe in the guy who cares if I touch myself, but why do you believe in the guy? And it seems to be simply that you have spent 22 minutes going, incredulity is a fucked up, like it really fucks with me. And to me, I would rather take all of these I don't knows and have a 3-letter word, despite the fact that it makes the answer much more complicated. Saying it is 1 syllable and it's super easy.
Right. I still have questions and dilemmas, is I guess what I'm trying to communicate. But I just feel that it's just one, big step, one big hurdle, like the charge of the quark has to be a certain amount. The spin, it's just, why is there 2 up quarks, 1 down quark, and a proton, and 1 up quark? I mean, it just seems that so many things are
William,
so unlikely.
William, those are great questions that you could probably ask a physicist or whatnot, as far as like getting real answers to it, or actually pose that to like your preacher or something like that. Maybe we could shift the conversation away from like you complaining about the different inconsistencies with the religious worldview. Maybe you could explain to us why you still believe in God despite all of these questions that you have.
It was only been 2 weeks. So, it's the thing is, it's
the gaps.
The evidence has just piled up with the DNA and the Enigma.
No, sir. You don't get to use the word evidence just to be whatever you want. The evidence that God exists is not, I don't have a simpler explanation, even though these things may have explanations. I don't have a simple 3-letter explanation. Therefore, it is evidence that answer is correct. That's not evidence for God. It's evidence for a missing answer. You are literally just describing God of the gaps, William. And I'm sitting here going,
obviously.
So why did God create quarks? How did he create quarks? Because if we're going to sit back and go, okay, sure, it has to be God. Now let's start asking questions about that God. Is God a natural force with access to incredible technology, or is he a supernatural God?
Right. I mean, the whole...
No, not right. What's the answer, William? Stop agreeing with me. You can't say yes and agree time after time and then still say you're a theist.
Well, it's only been 2 weeks. I don't know. I'm trying to...
Right.
Go
And
get
right
my
now you're
head
just
wrapped around
focusing
this.
going, oh man, nuclear force, God, all right, I can get up. And you're not letting yourself go
know.
like, God, okay, and then what would the questions about God be? Because the questions about God become much more, you're literally describing questions that haven't been answered and finding comfort in an answer that can't be falsified, that couldn't be answered. That the same question you're asking, why is nuclear force this way? You literally can't answer the question of why did God make nuclear force that way? Why would a God want to? Why would a God have wants at all? Why would you, well, these are questions I can never answer, so I can just let them go out into the void where God may or may not be. But then the questions that are just unanswered here, and some of your questions get super undermined by what will be likely future scientific, some questions we don't know if we'll ever answer. But if we discover life is in the universe and it's plentiful, everything you're saying about what the odds are goes way out the fucking window, because it might be that life basically just pops up whenever the conditions for it present itself, but the universe is so spread out it was harder to find. Like there's you're hedging, you're setting yourself down on like you're doing what everybody does. Here are the gaps that I'm filling with God, even though those gaps are going to close over time, but it'll never close completely. So I'll always have a place to live with my 3 letters in the freckle on Jimmy's ass. It's pointless, man.
Well, and like I said, we have 200 trillion or 200 billion galaxies, each containing 200 billion stars. They've said there's as many stars as there are grains
I don't
of
know
sand
why
in
you
all
keep
the beaches of the world.
I feel like I'm talking to a science fortune cookie that or a popsicle stick with a fun fact of the day. Yes, all of these numbers are amazing. How many of those galaxies how many other solar systems have we actually fully investigated whether or not life is present in any of them? Solar systems. How many solar systems total have we investigated?
Universe, sure.
We haven't even investigated our solar system. We literally have life. Right. We have machines seeing if there were signs of previous life on Mars because we don't know. And then we have these moons of Jupiter that we're thinking look like they could, maybe not, that we're going to be checking on too. We literally don't. And so you're sitting in there and going, it's like a weird thing where you're like, your only defense is either going to, or you could just give it up and live in the I don't know in an agnostic atheist position. Or you can live in this gap that's going to shrink, and every time it shrinks, go, the problem isn't me. It's not going to, at some point it's going to stop shrinking and my God will be left. Get out of town with that, William.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the layman's dilemma, there's so much, you could fill libraries with stuff I don't know. So, but we started a book club, the Atheist Christian Book Club 6 years ago.
But you also have access to a library. You know what I mean? Like yes, you can fill libraries with anything. All of us don't know, but anything that you don't know that you'd like to go find out that is currently discovered knowledge, you keep making points that are against your own. Let's go to that library. And here's the shelf of all the things you do know. And then there's the many shelves of the things you don't know. My library will have that too. And you have basically said, your defense here is all of those other books come to the same conclusion. God. That's bananas. Bananas.
Well, obviously there's defeaters for the existence of God, the problem of evil, so forth. But
I'm never compelled by moral arguments about God. I don't think they're good for our side or the other. If you're going to make it specific about Yahweh and what the claims in the Bible are, but whether a God exists has nothing to do with whether or not we would consider him evil.
Well, no, I agree 100% there. The morality never was compelling to me because you could just have the group morality, collective, community.
But if you're going to come here and tell me the Mormon God's a good dude, I'll challenge that shit.
Well, that's kind of easily falsified with DNA in the America's no Jewish DNA. So, but it's just terribly complex. But because I'm
surprised you value falsifiable claims, man. Honestly, you keep saying things that it's just like, it's only been 2 weeks. And I feel like you keep saying that as a defense of like, it's only been 2 weeks. Let's see how much better I get at bullshitting myself a month from now. William, I just,
hey, maybe.
I'm not mad. Your mother and I are just disappointed.
Tell me about it. But, I have to, it's like most people can just be agnostic. I took a firm atheistic position. When I speak at seminaries and churches, I was the atheist against the Christians. So, when I've got to make a decision. Agnostic just is not very satisfying to people. And I do believe there's enough evidence. It's not going to be like 90-10 or it's kind of just, the preponderance of the evidence seems to point to God. It's that simple for me,
Well, yeah, but
obviously,
so William, it seems to me like this preponderance of evidence for God has only, at least in this conversation, has only come in the form of gaps in our knowledge that you personally can't explain. So therefore, you count that as evidence for God, which isn't how shit works. But I mean, that's just how it's come across to us. I mean, if you've got a more concrete claim for evidence or something like that proves you're God, then feel free. So I just simply don't know what
give me
you
one
mean.
characteristic of your God we could investigate, a single one.
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question, because now, like I said, when you take this step, then you got, is it a personal God? Have you had God? I did ask God if he could personally reveal himself to me in a personal
William,
way. And he
William,
did say,
William.
He did say that when you get to
stop listening to the comments. My ego's not as big as the commenters go. I don't need a long explanation about how great the question was. I already gave myself the compliment. If you could just answer it. Sorry?
God said, when you get the subscribers that on the Jimmy Snow has, then I'll reveal myself to you. Okay.
Okay. Now, if you could give me a single characteristic we could investigate, we will be off to the races.
I think God has transcended human history, or the history of the universe, for that matter.
Would that be the characteristic we could investigate?
Well, 380,000 years after the Big Bang, we had electrons and photons actually coming together to form atoms, attracting each other. I think God's.
So now,
then this leads.
How does that factor into?
William, I know how to make the best 3-cheese pizza. First thing you want to do is find a cat. It's unrelated to making the pizza, but so is what you just said. I asked for a thing we could investigate something about, and you just went, pizza is cat.
What I'm saying, when I made this commitment, people go, well, wait, is it a tinkering God? Does God come in and get life off the ground? Because we have RNA that can auto-catalyze to form multicellular life. And so we can get close to a cell, a protocell or whatever, but does God have to come in and really get that first cell, that first prokaryotic cell off the ground? Does he have to step in and get the Cambrian off the ground? Is it a tinkering God? I don't know, guys.
I actually think we have adequate reason to believe none of that is necessary. And it's wild to go the contributions he'd be making are so minimal, and yet you think the goal is humanity. And so it's like, did he hit lightning in the right part of the ocean that gave us that first self-replicating molecule that had the potential of all of this? And then luckily I exist because clearly that was God's goal, which at the end of the day is usually what a sort of deistic, leaning pantheistic kind of weird God must have gotten in and jump-started some stuff thing seems to be, is everybody has this natural sense of they were intentionally made, and your parents didn't even make you intentionally. Even if they wanted to have a kid, they didn't choose which sperm and which egg, but you were the one, despite all of the odds that came out of it. So to sit there and go these strange odds of the things that happened and resulted in me, and somewhat egocentrically finding that to be the wonderful conclusion of this, therefore it needed this divine intervention, to me is the height of perhaps human, maybe it's hubris. I don't even know what to call it, but I think that is what motivates people to go down this path. And it's not one that I'm not saying that I don't have Obviously, we all have egos. You even kind of need one to survive. But I think that is what motivates a lot of this. So if you can't give me an actual characteristic of the God that we could investigate, I don't know how to continue, William.
Okay. Can I say all powerful?
How would we investigate if God is all powerful?
If he can create 100 billion galaxies with billions of stars.
So how do we investigate that God created 100 billion galaxies? You realize you're using circular reasoning that depends on you beginning with God exists and created the galaxies. I want to investigate God. I would like the demonstration that God created the galaxies.
No, there's no way I can prove that.
Well, then why did you give that as the example? Give me a falsified. What could we investigate? Do you have a single quality of God in your belief that is falsifiable? To mean if it isn't true, one could prove it not true.
Okay, how about God is good, even though we have defeaters like the Permian extinction, the Cambrian. What was that? There's been mass extinction. The KT extinction at 65 million years ago. Why would God?
What does good? We would have to start with what does good mean, and most religious people are going to say whatever God sanctions. So if you're saying it's not whatever God sanctions, then how am I meant to believe that something is maybe good according to a humanistic standard? It's what I hope you would say if you're not going to go with that, and go the all-powerful God, the God who could have stopped the Holocaust, decided to watch instead.
Maybe, God, the Holocaust, the problem of evil is a tough, guys. And, it is.
No, sir, but you don't get it. You don't get to back out on it when you use the term good. So either you need to define good in a way that we can both agree to before we proceed, then present the God, and we need to investigate the goodness of the God, because you're still talking about a hypothetical God. We're not we're not investigating anything. William, I think actually, because we're coming up on 40 minutes. What we need to do here is
a good point.
Go back,
I'm agreeing
watch
with you.
the call.
God, I'm saying, intervenes to get the Cambrian off the ground, to get the first cell off the ground, baby. But
and you can't demonstrate that either.
Focused on that? Well, I don't understand why you're so focused on the Cambrian explosion and when nucleus is developed and all this other kind of shit. I don't understand why you're focused on that particular section of human history, especially when you're talking about God being all good. When you could just go. I'm assuming that you take the Gospels as history. Yahweh raped Mary, so how can you say God is good when he's fucking raping children out there?
Oh, that's the God of the Bible. You can't blame God for that.
So you're a minimally interventionist, but somewhat interventionist, deistic, appealing kind of theist. It sounds like, William. William, at the end of the day, you've made an assertion. Can we at least agree then, William, that civilization's ahead of us, because we'll probably be dead before we find out. If they find out life is abundant, including life that you would see post-Cambrian, is abundant in the universe, they should look back and go, boy, that William jumped the gun and was kind of dumb about it.
Hey, I jumped the gun a lot. So you got a good point.
So don't jump the gun, William. We're at 40 minutes. Go back, watch the call, look at the challenges, try and call in with something concrete we can investigate and quote unquote pull apart, and let's go from there. All right.
Hey, and good luck with your poker career, John. Good luck. I'll see you at the World Series of Poker, hopefully.
Oh, but fuck me with my poker career. I'm just kidding. I don't play poker. All right, bye, William. No, I've played it a few times in my life. I try to deal so I could cheat if I could.
By the way. Okay. All right. Hey, it's been great, guys.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Bye, William.
Yeah.
I think I've heard from Matt. There's a good scene out here.
Yeah. So I guess maybe I just got confused because I thought that he was arguing for a Christian or an Abrahamic version of God, but maybe he didn't say that.
No, he didn't. Yeah, at one point he brought up them as examples of bad gods, I think. And at a certain point he said so much that it all flooded together of equally non-falsifiable stuff. Pizza equals cat, guys. Pizza equals cat. Is that new merch? Pizza emoji equals cat emoji. Let me give Arden a note here before we jump on the next one. Let's see. I don't understand why this person's calling. We'll probably move through that. Let's take this call. All right, well, let's just go in order of the calls as they're here in here. Hannah in Ireland, you are wanting to discuss the moralities of humanism versus Islam. Go ahead, Hannah in Ireland. You're on the line with Jimmy and John. Hannah, you may need to wake your phone up by tapping the screen.
Hi, got it.
There we are. Hello.
Hi, good evening. Hi, John. Hi, Jimmy.
Hi.
My question is this. Can I get right to it?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm an atheist married to a Muslim, and we recently decided we would challenge each other on our beliefs, and I got stuck on a reply to his question regarding, we were discussing what's better for society, Islam or humanism, and his question, I got stuck on the reply to this question, and I need your help with it. His question was, what is there in humanism to stop a father marrying his daughter or a brother marrying a sister? And besides the natural disgust, which I couldn't justify in like rational, I couldn't give a rational reply for, and the health repercussions of if they have children, like over time. And then because I said over time, he said, but it won't stop the initial marriage and he used the word fornication. And that's it basically I could come up with, which I understand, at least to me and to him, it didn't sound convincing enough, whereas Islam has like a structure of who can marry who, and brothers and sisters cannot marry in Islam, and fathers and daughters or mothers and sons cannot marry either. So
okay, first of all,
a point to him.
That's not universally true. Hang on.
Pardon?
First of all, that's not universally true, and there are still incestuous relationships within Islam. Second of all, this is a very silly topic to be calling the humanism versus Islam thing on, because marriage isn't a concept of humanism. So what you're describing is what would require us to limit the rights people have to be able to do certain things with other people, and what would it mean to a humanist? Well, listen, if marriage is a government contract that gets you certain benefits and we're extending that to people, I don't much give a fuck who's getting it with each other, because it shouldn't be dependent on who you are having sex with. Since when does the word marriage have to inherently, are asexual people not actually married? Are people who stop having sex but remain married not actually married? So sex, first of all, isn't directly a quality of marriage. And then as far as marriage itself is not a concept of humanism, it is a religious concept and now a government and societal concept. So if he just wants to talk about what within humanism, well, then we have to start breaking down other concepts, like you would do that which is best psychologically for a person. You could probably come up with some extreme thing of like, hey, these two people never met each other. They didn't know they were siblings. They weren't raised together. They actually don't physically resemble each other much. And genetically, they're both sterile. They could never have kids. So it's like, and you would basically sit there and go, okay, at this point, I just have the heebie-jeebies about it. It's gross, but I can't actually articulate why it's gross. That has to do with more societal stuff. However, there's still plenty of stuff with incestuous relationships. We are psychologically wired to, because it is evolutionary beneficial to us, to be repulsed by that idea. And so it often, even people are often repulsed by people they were raised with that were adopted, or step family that comes in young enough, because diversity is better for you. And so it isn't a matter of whether or not, like, if you've broken free of that taboo, is there still one of those dangers present? but actually it's more of an issue of most people won't be broken of that psychological fact, and the presence of incest still present in those like weird scenarios that aren't the crazy hypothetical where you are getting so myopic to make a point about greater society. It would imply severe mental illness in a person who is raised, for example, with their sister or their mother or whatever, and still want to fuck them. And so you would, if you're going to put policies up and laws surrounding it, which again, I'm not sure we should, because marriage and sex is actually a conflation of religion, whether it should be or not is certainly I had a life partner that we were not romantic or sexual for a good 8 years of my life. And we definitely should have gotten benefits from the government because we shared all expenses, but he was my best friend. So the concept, it is a conflation. It is, what's that?
May I interject?
I was finishing up just to say these are many conflations of several points, of several things, and it's literally it wouldn't matter.
Okay, so say it was the question was what's to stop mother and the son, a father and the daughter having sex? Would I use the same line of thinking yes, the same line of thinking that you just used now?
No, in that specific scenario, that would actually imply the existence of abuse because you are breaking into a type of power imbalance that is virtually impossible to not abuse. If a father raises a daughter, there isn't really an ability to consent in that scenario because of the ways in which a person with that type of inherent societal psychological power, the person that you commit to, that person who says the stove is hot and you trust inherently, maybe not with that specific, but so many things, it is nearly impossible to conceive of unless, again, we go with that weird situation of like, and one of them's 60 and the other's 78 years old and they don't even know that they're related at all. Then you get into the weird, crazy myopic ones. But no, otherwise a child and their parent is almost certainly going to be an abusive situation. There will almost certainly be abuse present, as well as actually most sibling relationships and other family dynamic relationships too. They're also extraordinarily ripe with it. But if you're sitting there and going, if you could somehow remove every single source of inequality, every source of abuse, because inequality doesn't necessitate abuse, it just primes it for abuse. If you can remove everything, then of course you have nothing. But good luck doing that.
I see. So humanism, the premise of it is to reduce harm and increase well-being. So that would play into it.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Abuse is anti-humanistic, and parent-child relationships are rather inherently abusive. That term is somewhat ironic, inherent in there, but almost in a way that language can be fun to use.
I did mention the power dynamic as well. So, yeah, okay. And I will listen to this back and think about it a bit, because we both want to carry on these kinds of discussions between ourselves.
But I'd like to point out, he is still issuing to you a religious-based, sexual, conceptualized form of marriage in this proposal. And it's as though like we were 100%. Sitting here and going like, oh, but which one is going to be better for, which one is humanism or Islam going to be better for distribution of the sacrament? What? Yeah, why would humanism have an opinion on that?
So in Islam, if you read the hadith, the dowry given to the woman is specifically says in authentic hadith that it's so you can fornicate with her. Those are the words used in the translation.
Sure.
So it's really disgusting. It's disgusting.
And
but
why is his definition of marriage better than yours?
Exactly. No, that's something else we have to go into. We've only decided this weekend to start challenging each other's beliefs, but it's something we both want to do in the future. So
let me challenge his beliefs.
I will.
I thought dowries were paid to the father. Am I just misunderstanding how purchasing women works?
I'm not sure. So there is money that gets given to the woman, and it remains hers throughout the marriage. She can do what she wants. She can like save it up and keep it forever, but the woman has to be given gold in a traditional Muslim marriage. There's different types of marriages in Islam, but the ones which are, for example, the first wife, and everyone knows, not the secret wives, because Muslims can have secret wives as well. So yes, no, the woman gets given. There is some like financial protection of the woman in Islam that's done. Like I study Islam, and I study the Quran, and I study the Hadith. So like there's these things. There's some really horrible things as well. But Muslims, just a lot of them, at least the ones I've met, let's put it that way. And I know that a lot of them, from listening to videos and stuff, they learn what they learn at school and they don't continue reading. It's only the ones who like go up to university to study Islam that actually read this stuff.
I will tell you this, Hannah, you have a lot of work ahead of you, because very few people's minds are changed by somebody as close as their husband. Now, there are times where it happens. More often it is the case that... My intention is to bring him as close to humanism as possible. That I'm not trying to go beyond that. It could actually be the case, though, that if you're not careful, you can do the opposite. Is kind of what I'm getting at. My parents, whether it's true or not, will say that my challenges affirm their faith, because they're able to hear their challenges but comfortably go to bed at night still Mormon, because we have methods of people we love. We have methods of being more able to easily dismiss them, because we now, with parents, it's a different dynamic than with like a romantic person. So I'm just saying, it is often the case where you mostly want to, with people you love, give them the license to ask questions, not be too harsh and too abrasive in your responses, but also encourage them to be exploring outside of you, because you will find that it is their own exploration and engagement with other information that will be more powerful at changing their mind. What we're doing right now, you two are basically in a competition, and the fact that it's more of a competition. No, we don't discuss in that way. We discuss with a lot of love and respect towards each other. So I've had many competitions of non-debate form that happen with love and respect. It doesn't mean it's not competitive. My girlfriend and I just played Scrabble, and I did it with love and respect. She did it with love. But that's mostly a joke. I was seeing if she was in the other room, because I'd hear her laugh. But thank you for the heads up. It's still going to be competitive. And in the end, he's hoping to also change your mind toward him, and you're hoping to change his mind toward you. 100%. Just be cognizant of all that. He told me so. No, that's, he told me so. Like, so I know where he stands. He's like, he said he would like it if I become a Muslim, and he does pray for that. But I am trying my best to inoculate myself up. Yeah, good. I'm glad you are. And we're good. I'm glad you called. I will say, using this call as we say goodbye to you, to encourage anybody who is watching, and this is not a criticism of you, Hannah. I understand love is one of those things, and you do that. But these are the types of conversation, if you have the option, please have these options before you marry somebody. You're already married, Hannah, so can't do shit about it now. Of course. Yeah. No, I'm happily married, so like, and I'd be happy if I'm not married. If things don't work out, like, I know how to take care of myself. I was good before. He's just bonus, At I've actually stops being bonus. Go on. I just thought of one last thing to suggest to you before you go. I would make a list going through qualities of Muslim marriages, and I would actually make a list that you could present to him of separate from that thing of like, here are the things about a Muslim marriage that I am glad we're not going to apply to our marriage. That I, as a non-Muslim woman, am extremely relieved I don't have to live by. And I think he would struggle to find a list of things that he thinks are tenets of humanistic marriage that he would have to do if you guys would adopt it. Because honestly, it sounds like you guys are living in a more humanistic marriage if you have options to not do what he wants. If that there's choice even involved, humanistic. I would take that challenge to him. Cool. He believes he's close to humanism. He didn't even know what this word is before, and now he's using it in a positive way, which at least is like a step of progress. So I'm happy about that. Cool.
Can
Love to hear it.
Is there time for like a comment, a tangential comment and question besides this? But thank you for your feedback about this.
Very quick, please. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes. Okay. So sometimes I hear some hosts on the line talk about Islam, and I cringe because some things people say or how some things hosts say are so wrong that I can imagine the Muslim on the other side of the call. When Muslims call, they're like, okay, this host doesn't know what they're talking about. Is there any way I can help make some corrections or just give some information to hosts, or it's not relevant, this thing I'm thinking of?
Sure. Your best shot at it is going to be emailing contact@Q&A line and make sure that you identify in the email, like, hey, on this call, this was said, this is incorrect. Now, you may find that you're going to come across Islam's a large religion, and you may find that they have examples that they disagree whether or not it's untrue or not. But I'm not going to speak for them. Yeah. So, but if there are good corrections to make, definitely go for it. And just make sure that you're specific, and if you can include timestamps and all that kind of stuff, and the sources of information that you sources exterior to you, because no one at the line, we wouldn't be working here if we're just going to take, trust me, bro.
Of course. No, I'll give reference, like John Gleason says, citation needed.
Sure.
Okay.
Awesome.
Hell yeah.
Well, thank you, Hannah.
Okay, thanks. Have a good evening. Ciao.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Ooh, Chow is so classy. I am white trash. I don't know why you're wasting Chow on me. This could be interesting. I think we can cap there. I'm going to skip down to David real quick, but we will be jumping back into order after. David in Texas, a theist. David, how are you now?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Delightful. I will tell you, you're coming in a little loud. Are we on speakerphone, perhaps?
Not at all. I'm just a boisterous person.
All right, fair enough. All right, what you got for us, David?
I just want to say Jesus was the true Lord within lords on earth.
Well, wait. Are you here to testify, or are you here to are you going to be defending this, or are you just calling to testify?
No, I mean both. Jesus was Lord outside of Lord. He was the
he was
human form of our God.
David, he was, as if he's not anymore. Are we speaking past tense?
No. He still is. He is still a parent.
Okay, so Jesus is Lord. You could conceivably say Jizz Lord, right?
Say that again, please.
Sorry, I was making a bad joke.
John's being a silly goose. All right. So Jesus, you said that Jesus is the Lord of Lords, and he was the body, the encapsulation of the God of your God. But you're also claiming that you're not saying like this is what the story in the Bible is, that simply describing to us what the Bible contains, but that is actually a true fact of reality. Correct?
He is one of the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
According to the Bible, or in reality, do you believe that is a fact of existence?
I believe that in fact of existence.
Okay, great. How can you prove that to us?
Well, look at the archaeology of the Middle East and Eastern Africa.
I believe the Bible does legitimately describe a real place that exists, but it wouldn't mean that the story told about that place is itself true. So, for example, I don't think that, no one's claiming Spider-Man is true, but if someone did...
See, that's where we butt heads.
Hey, David, can I please... David, could I finish my sentences before you take in? all I'm asking you right now is let's not interrupt each other. Let me finish my point and then I'll hand it back to you. Is that okay?
Sounds good.
All right. So David, my point is, if you're going to say because the Bible takes place in Jerusalem and the Bible has references to places and archaeology shows that those places exist, I could make claims about something like Spider-Man and say because New York City exists and the buildings in New York City exist, the comic book of Spider-Man is also true. But obviously that logic doesn't work. So what I'm asking is the story of the Bible, not where the Bible took place. How do we prove the story of the Bible is true?
Okay, well, there's no archaeological evidence against the Bible. All the archaeological evidence is for the Bible. Okay.
No, okay.
Stop.
So hold on. Let me challenge this real quick. Well, let me challenge this real quick.
Are you
made a
screaming the
claim.
word stop? Excuse me, David, you don't have power here. So if you were wanting to go on and do multiple claims, you're also going to have to break that up because we're not going to do a Gish Gallop thing here. But as I'm sitting here and going, let's not talk over each other, let's not interrupt, which we will do if it is necessary because you're trying to continue on past a point that needs to be investigated. If you're making one point at a time, we're talking about not being fucking rude. So how do you think you screaming the word stop in our ear is going to go? I'm going to unmute you in a moment. But this is not how conversations between two parties respecting each other usually looks. And I think we're actually holding up our end of what that looks like at the moment. Not that I'm incapable of breaking free of that. And you might see that before this call is over. So, David, please engage as a positive good faith interlocutor now with John as I unmute you and listen to John's question and challenge to the point you just made.
Yeah. So the claim was that archaeology verifies the Bible, or in some sense. I mean, there's several different things that we can point to in the Old Testament that is definitely not archaeologically verified by the Bible. Like, for instance, the walls of Jericho came down a long time before the supposed Israelites came into the area and took over Jericho. So that's not true. I mean, you could go to Ezekiel with the prophecy of Tyre and, how Ezekiel prophesies that Nebuchadnezzar was going to take over the island city of Tyre, but he was really only able to take over the older mainland city of Tyre. And then Ezekiel had to come back and make an excuse as to why Nebuchadnezzar spent 13 years trying to take the island city, but couldn't. So, I mean, there's several different archaeological things that we could point to as far as that goes. And then if you fast track to the New Testament, we could also talk about different archaeological aspects of that, like how there's no one tomb, there's no evidence of anything as far as the Gospels go, and then finally whether or not we should expect any kind of archaeological evidence for Jesus or any of these things that you're talking about.
Okay. You went through a whole genre of atheist crap that is very hard to verify. But when you look at Sodom and Gomorrah, you look at Moses crossing the Red Sea, you look at so many other discoveries.
I'm glad you bring this up.
That prove the Bible worthy. You still choose to say, "Oh, we're just here because of nothing."
David,
Because
okay, so
nothing,
David, you're jumping around.
Nothing created
Can
us.
we go back?
And nothing is what we are.
Hey, David, nobody's position here is that nothing created us. So right now you're straw manning. So let's go back to the point you just made.
So
David,
what created us then?
David, David, my parents created me personally, and I think yours did too.
Yeah, your parents created you. Who created your parents?
Mm-hmm.
Who created your grandparents? Who created your great grandparents? Who created your great grandparents? Who created your family tree? Who created
How long are we going to do this? Parents. Wait, as far as the earth goes, David, stop. David, stop. No, I don't currently hold
that's your viewpoint.
David, when are you going to let me actually talk? I am not presenting the idea that we popped out of nothing. Now, I would like to go back to a point you made. Instead of trying to argue against the straw man that you want me to be, I'm not that guy. So I want to go back to the point. I like particularly, you say the archaeological evidence for Moses crossing the Red Sea. Could you give me an example of archaeological evidence?
Well, there's a huge 10, 15-foot plate of glass that was just discovered within the past 15 years.
Okay.
On the path of Moses, which would prove
in the Red Sea? Where?
Fire.
What?
In the Red Sea? Where are you saying this is? Okay.
This is the Red Sea.
So, I just looked it up, and I am using. There is actually no credible scientific or archaeological evidence of a huge plate of glass that exists or has ever existed in the Red Sea. Sir, are you going to let me finish?
It's already been proved, man. It's already been discovered.
Are you going to let me finish?
Shown.
Oh my goodness, David.
Pictured.
David, how many drinks have you had tonight?
Doesn't matter.
It does. It matters to me because one of the things that I have found that alcohol does is it lowers a person's inhibition. And unfortunately, it makes a person more rude because right now you have zero inhibition against interrupting constantly and nonstop. And I am trying to discuss this with you in all complete honesty and respect, and how much you are, the way you are interacting. I knew you were drunk 10 minutes ago, but I thought I would give it a shot that maybe you just had a couple drinks to loosen up for the call. You're being extremely rude. You are asserting things without evidence. And David, you're actually giving the kinds of defenses that I think you would find people in your church wish you wouldn't. Because if you want to say archaeological evidence for Moses, all of the archaeological evidence not only points to that the story of Moses is bogus, the story of the Exodus is bogus. The types of Jews which they suggested were in Egypt at that time didn't actually exist in that region at that time and wouldn't for several hundred more years. The story of the crossing of the sea, the Jewish enslavement, these are all stories, perhaps early attempts at what you might call racism or ethnicism to basically make a bad guy these darker people we dislike in this part of the world. These are the realities, Dave. It doesn't much affect me for a drunk person to laugh because you guys will laugh at anything. Bro, you would have laughed just as boisterously if I simply farted. And so far, your arguments have come down to simply a fart, and yet I haven't laughed in your face. Please call back sober. We'll talk about it another time.
Man. You have
and your arguments are and this is a farce and your arguments are farts. Please call back when you are sober and we will have an actual good faith discussion about these things. Thank you, David. Kind of wish I had farted. If I had had a fart loaded up in the chamber, I think I would have put the microphone to my butt.
Yeah. I gotta say, I've never heard of somebody just hear like a refutation of their point and being like, look, it's proved, man.
Hey, I do want to let the chat know if anybody's mad about this. Generally, the reason we ask people not to speculate about the caller and start insulting them or speculate that they're drunk is honestly, it's mostly because we know a lot of callers will have the live chat up. I'm not much bothered personally bothered that you guys, I heard he was drunk immediately too, right? I've been sober long enough and around drunk assholes long enough to know. Not you, John. You're lovely when you're drunk. Anyway, that was a joke. Okay, good. You laughed. I was like, oh man, fuck, did I hurt his feelings? Anyway, but it is about, we try to keep the chat. You'll notice we don't put almost any effort, if any. We kind of let the natural censors of YouTube into censoring in the comments after the fact. The live chat is pragmatic because we don't want, it's already annoying when people start going, oh, I see people in your call think my thing is stupid. And to some degree, we can't go crazy with it, but we want to like stop short of the things that are going to make people excessively silly. But anyway, pizza equals cat.
It's
Moses
proven.
equals
It's just
fart.
it's proven.
It's proven.
And it's proven.
It's proven. I love when people
That's
bring
my
up Moses,
favorite.
because at this point, a lot of Christians won't bring up Moses anymore because they know how bad it looks. Especially after the years of them talking about them chariot wheels, to find out that that was posted by a satire magazine. They ran with that shit, bro. You guys posted the Christian Onion as a fucking peer-reviewed source. Are you fucking dumb? And the answer is yes, they can't help it. They're terribly stupid. Those specific ones. Hashtag not all Christians. All Christians. Anyway, no, I like a lot of Christians. A lot of them are nice. A lot of them are good people. Attack the idea, not the person. Well, in fairness, I said the fart thing, people. So my hands aren't washed of this thing. Are you talking to me or them? Because I kind of do both. But I don't use it as an argument in the middle of the argument. That's how I end them. He, however, what did he say? You just said a bunch of atheist junk. And I'm like, can you repeat any of them? Could you repeat one point?
Yeah.
Repeat. You got to love, how many drinks have you had? That's not important. It's like when a person says, when you call someone, you're like, is this Brian? And they go, who's this? And you're like, okay, so it is Brian, for the record. Like, you don't say who's this if you're not Brian. Anyway, you don't say that doesn't matter if you're not drunk. Pizza equals cat.
Pizza equals
Jimmy
cat.
in New York. An agnostic person who, Jimmy, are we just sharing a story? Because generally we're asking for a question. But I only see the notes being a story. Yeah.
No, because I used to be a Christian, but you guys are helping me my deconversion. So from time to time, I think about stuff that once helped me bound by Christianity, and I'm still struggling with. I'm trying to deconvert. I'm still asking you questions about because this was the stuff used to keep me in Christianity. Have you heard about a film called Legend with Tom Cruise?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah.
Have you seen the movie called Legend with Tom Cruise?
This, Jimmy. Yes. Yes, we have. You gotta wait more than a second before you go, hello, yeah. I remember you, Jimmy.
Sorry about that. My apology. Have you seen the movie called? So you've seen the movie called Legend by Tom Cruise?
Years ago, yes.
Yeah, you saw how the devil looked like in that movie. Who played the devil in that movie? What's the name again of the actor? I forgot his name.
Oh, Tom Cruise. Wait, who played who? I know Tim Curry was in it. Or are you asking about the girl?
Yeah, Tim Curry. No, I'm talking about the devil in that movie. The devil with horns and all that in that movie.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the movie that I watched as a child that they used to indoctrinate me in Christianity, because like back when I was little, they had what they call hell houses, whereby if they want you to make an altar call, they'll show you movies about stuff like about hell. That if you don't give a life to Jesus Christ.
Sure, we're in the last bit of the show here, so if we can be a little more fast and succinct and tell me what are you asking?
No, what do you think about those things? I'm just asking your opinion about those type of stuff. I think
it's wild to be indoctrinated into Christianity on a movie starring a Scientologist.
Okay, so you don't. Okay. Now I see your point. I'm just asking about your opinion on that issue, because that was used to keep me in Christianity. So
I get it, but look, I hear you that, like, yes. Okay, here's what I'm gonna say. The popular beliefs of a society are going to be reinforced by the cultural products of that society. Okay, so there's going to be themes in movies and stuff, and a lot of them are going or imagery, and a lot of it is going to reflect the society at large. So even a movie like Legend is going to be talking about things like unicorns. Isn't so Christian, even though I think is there unicorns in the Bible? Maybe just the Book of Mormon. Kinda.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's more like a rhino, but yeah, maybe unicorn.
Yeah. you're talking about Satan, you're talking about demons, you're talking about, and you already exist within a framework and a society which recognizes those things. So whether or not even any of the imagery is meant to be specific for you, you're going to adapt it that way. You've got the lens in which you are seeing the world through. And so over here on this channel, we are trying to promote a lens of skepticism that goes, I watched the movie Heretic last week, and I'm now dating a girl who's like so into horror movies. So that's a thing I have to do now. I'm kidding. We're having a good time. We try to watch a new movie every night. But anyway, I'm watching all kinds of things with themes that are obviously like, I don't watch Game of Thrones and then I'm like, oh, this is starting to make me think dragons might exist and I have a shot at sleeping with Emilia Clarke. I know both of those are fantasies, okay? And so having a good world in which you can separate those fantasies from reality is the benefit of skepticism. And there's not much we can do about it. I'm not going to tell a culture like, stop making movies with spiritual. I wouldn't want to. I enjoy a lot of films that still have Christian imagery and stuff in it.
No, the reason why I ask you this question is because I grew up in that world, and it so amazes me to I'm still in shock that those what I grew up in is not real. I'm still kind of having a shock that all my life I've been duped. So I'm still like in shock that your type of world exists. I thought that was the world we live in. So it's just like a shock to me. So that's why I love your show, because you challenge my beliefs.
You should you should challenge your beliefs.
I do, but it's like it's hard for me to challenge it because I was raised in it. I thought that was reality. So it's like I never thought that people like you do exist. So
Brother, I treated a person who doesn't exist like a grandfather who was supposedly alive 2,600 years ago, and I revered him the most because he was tall in stature and said, I will go and do the things which the Lord hath commanded. And it turns out Nephi was a made up guy. This is the cost of disillusionment. You have to come to terms with that you used to believe a lot of silly things. But I think with that, Jimmy, I think we covered your topic. If you have a quick question, we can get it. But otherwise, we're going to move through these last couple.
Next time when I call you, I will hope to have a more lengthy time. But thank you anyway. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Have a great one.
Bye.
Bye.
I had a similar but opposite experience with the Left Behind movie, because like it fooled me into thinking that everybody got raptured, and then when it turned out to be bullshit, I was like, oh, okay, good.
You didn't laugh at me saying Emilia Clarke me sleeping with Emilia Clarke is just as much a fantasy as dragons existing, and I was like, well, now people are just going to think I was being a douche, like a misogynist, telling people which celebrities I think are hot. I had a huge crush on back in the day. I always smiles is my thing that I always like fall for really hard, and she's got like a really pretty smile. Yeah.
Sorry, I think I was looking at all the information for that movie Legend, and I'm like, why the fuck would this convince anybody of Christianity? Like I was just totally confused, so I missed it. Sorry.
I will say, Jimmy, you said something there at the end, and I hope you're listening now. If you're calling because you want to be on the air, please don't. We don't. You said something at the end of like, I said, I think we covered the topic, and then you said, I hope next time I get to be on more or longer with more time. Why? If we covered the topic, we don't know. I'm going to admit something. I think I've admitted a couple other times before. We have a thing that a phrase we use in the background with repeat callers, and we start mentioning it to hosts of like, hey, just so you know, this person who's called in, they have, and we call it co-host syndrome. And it's the type of people who call in that they're mostly calling to be like, they want to be an unofficial institution. And we know that that's what you guys are doing. Stop doing it. Because eventually one of us gets tired of it and we blow up on you and you never call ever again. And usually they make me be the one to blow up on you. And then you never call again. Fucking Jackie. Anyway, I'm excited for this one. We're talking about Ghost. We're talking about Ghost. Gaz. Am I saying your name right? I would hate to say it wrong and then need to be constantly condescended to by the caller. Gaz in Wales, you are on the line with Jimmy and John.
Hello, gentlemen. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Excuse
Great.
my accent. I'm not drunk. Don't panic.
It's all good. Yeah, it's funny though. It says you're from Wales. You don't sound Welsh to me. You almost sound, well, go on.
Oh, I'm deep in the South Wales valleys. I can show you I'm Welsh. Use my accent.
Right. No worries.
I wanted to ask you a question, but can I ask you something else first? Or have I got to get straight on to the point?
I don't know which question you were going to ask. So you could have just asked whatever you wanted, and I wouldn't have been able to tell if you do whatever you want.
Oh, right.
I don't know what order we're getting our courses here. Just give me the meal.
Thank you. Have you ever heard of Sir Roger Penrose?
Mm-hmm.
Penrose, yeah.
Yeah, right. I want to clarify that I'm a humanist, but I think everyone's got to be an agnostic because nobody knows deep down.
Sure.
So Roger Penrose and a surgeon called Stuart, excuse me if I get his name wrong, is like Amaroff or something that, and they got this idea that the soul, well, the alleged soul is in the microtubules of the brain. Have you ever heard of that before?
The microtubules of the brain?
Yeah, the microtubules of the brain.
And did he create? I don't know if I've come across this before. I've come across a lot. Don't clip that out.
Oh, well, if you can type, well, if you look on Google, Roger Penrose, probably come under quantum physics actually, and basically, there's a surgeon called Stuart Hameroff claims when you're under anesthetic, the microtubules in the brain, he claims that's when the soul allegedly comes out of the body. As I said, I'm personally
okay. So Penrose's theory about microtubes was actually about consciousness and where consciousness emerges from. I don't think he used the term soul in anything besides to maybe mean consciousness, but not as a supernatural thing.
Well, and if I can add, the only right, if I can add, the only study that has actually done any kind of like, I guess, work on whether or not there is a soul, wasn't actually able to prove that a soul exists. Basically, they tried to weigh a body at certain points and notice a considerable difference, at least, scientifically considerable. And it was easily explained by, various decaying properties of a body. So like, there's no evidence that like a soul is necessary for a body or that one leaves our body once we die. Like there's just no scientific evidence or empirical evidence for that.
That was a long time ago. That was called the 32 gram experience, if I remember.
Could be.
Yeah,
so anyway,
about that.
I think we could just put it all very simply. Generally aware of his ideas about consciousness, that he believed that there was a quantum element to it, that's contained within the microtubes. The microtubes release those on your death. They get released out into the universe somewhere else, and you could potentially describe that as you surviving. However, whether or not it would be like you would have organized consciousness, that you would be still experiencing like you are now, seems to be suggested. No, not the case. I wouldn't say I find any of that information compelling. And the more we seem to discover about quantum anything, the more it seems to be that every way a religious person has ever attempted to engage it has been just nonsense. and that you're actually safe for assuming they're going to be wrong about it. And then even on the scientific side, it is one of the more complex things to actually solve. It's easier to recognize than it is to model, for example. So I don't think you put these in any kind of category of something that myself or John can clarify if anything I just said he disagrees with, but I wouldn't say that I sit with any level of angst that one day we're going to wake up and then going to be like, God proven or soul found, and it's over. Bill Nye the Science Guy is here to explain quantum Jesus.
I couldn't agree more.
Great.
May I have a couple more minutes of your time, or have we got to go?
Are you asking, are we going back to you don't have to keep asking, excuse the accent. Are you wanting to go back to the original topic, or what is the direction you're wanting to go now?
Well, I did have two things, if that's okay. The first one is, what's your opinion on deathbed visions?
I think that when you are dying, you are basically doing incredible amounts of drugs that your brain is releasing. And I find that the stories generally are consistent with the person's cultural exposure and knowledge, and that it seems to most often be relative to their geography and where they were raised. So I don't think that anything is happening outside of the brain of the individual that is conceiving these.
Also, just to add on to what Jimmy was saying, what Jimmy was saying, we can't actually determine when these experiences are happening, either before or after, like oxygen flow is restored to the brain, or like somebody's brought back to life or whatever. So there's no way that we can actually delineate that and determine that it's happening during brain death.
No, I want about NDs. I was on about deathbed visions. But the point I'm making, for instance, how could you explain, say you're gravely ill on your deathbed, you're 80 years old, you got dementia, and then your 84-year-old brother died, you wasn't told about it, and then an hour before you pass away, all of a sudden, you're seeing your brother, he says it's time to come, time to go, and they're aware that the person dying is aware that they died, and they like,
well, okay, how do I explain? I can't definitively tell you how any story came about. How do I come up with a natural explanation that is far more likely than ghosts exist? By first of all starting with you could be lying, second of all starting with anybody who told you he never heard about could be lying, then third would be you think he didn't know and didn't hear about his brother lying or dying, but he did. So we're up to 3 good candidate natural explanations, none of which I can prove aren't correct, multiple of which you can't prove aren't correct. And so I would never rely on then going like, yeah, okay, well, those natural 3 things, which have been demonstrated to exist time and time again in other stories, I'm just going to take Gaz's word for it, that for sure none of those are the case here. And it's most likely that he actually saw a ghost. Now, as far as seeing loved ones and seeing people, the manifestations of people, and especially having like very strong dreams sometimes while you're kind of still awake, that's actually an extremely common part of death. In fact, spouses often think of, if their person dies, they'll often have dreams of their spouse coming, and I want to say even like lifting them up into heaven. Very, very common experience.
I just asked you.
Yes, I understand. You asked, yes, I do. You asked, how can an 80-year-old individual be dying, not be aware of their 84-year-old brother dying because no one told them that their 84-year-old brother dying, and yet as they are about to die, they see a manifestation of their brother saying, it's time for you to come and join me?
Yes.
And okay. So did you not understand the 3 candidate explanations I gave to you?
Yes, I did. But my final thing, the main reason I called, obviously, it's anecdotal. But if you just say it's not anecdotal and it's fact, It is fact, but just say for argument's sake now, because as I said, I'm an agnostic myself. My stepfather died in 1999. In 2001, my nephew was born, and as he was passing my property one night, he wanted to say goodnight to my mother, and my mother come down the stairs to say goodnight to her grandson, and as we opened the door, he pointed on the stairs and he said, "There's Eddie," and that was my stepfather. Now, how can that be explained?
Sure. How old was the kid?
About 18 months, 2 years old. He'd never even heard of him.
Hang on.
The
How
man
old
had
was
never
the
been
kid at the
mentioned.
time of the experience?
Around 18 months.
8?
18, around 2, 3 years old.
18 months old. Okay, is it 18 or is it 2 or is it 3?
No, my stepfather died in 99. My nephew was born in 2001, and he was about 3 or 4 at the time.
Okay, just so you know, so far, this is exactly why I said my candidate explanations start with the honesty of the person telling me. Because you have so far said 18 months, 2 years old, 2 or 3 years old, and you have now landed on 4 years old. If I ask you to tell the story 9 more times, he will be on his deathbed at 100 years old by the time we get done.
No, you're misunderstanding what I'm saying.
I'm not.
My stepfather died in 99.
And then your child, the child was born in 2001.
My nephew was born,
Mm-hmm.
and then he was about 2 or 3 years old. I can't remember the exact age.
A moment ago you said 4. And before that you said 18 months old.
2 to 3 years old.
So this is the official range we're sticking with, right?
He was 2 to 3 years old. Either way, if he was 18 months or 3 years old, how could you explain a toddler, either way, saying his name, saying, "There's Eddie Bray"? How could you explain that? And,
and what else did he say? All he said was Eddie? All he said was Eddie. Right?
He said,
"There's
"There's
Eddie."
Eddie Bray." And that was my stepfather's name, who had died.
Eddie Great? Is that what he said?
No, he said, "There's Eddie by day." And he just pointed onto the stairs. Now, that's the only thing that has ever made me think, oh, that's a bit strange. You know, that can't be explained.
Well, none of this. It's still not an impressive. All he said was the name Eddie and pointed. Like this so doesn't. You said, how can you explain that? I don't know the exact explanation for yours, but here's a candidate explanation. People talk about people named Eddie. People talk about imaginary friends. Your child is around people, and children are in. Excuse me. Wait a moment. A child is an informational sponge. So whether or not your child ever saw Eddie or what, first of all, you don't know. You don't know what conversation your child was ever around your mother and heard about. You don't know what it's not an impressive thing. When you go, how do you explain it? I genuinely don't know what that explanation is, but I can come up with a candidate natural explanation that we have confirmed. We can confirm other stories has been what other stories have come from before. And we have 0 confirmed supernatural. It was a ghost thing. And so if I was sitting there and I was being you, literally 2 days ago, I mentioned Amanda Bynes in conversation. And today my girlfriend was like, whoa, Amanda Bynes just popped up in my algorithm. Why am I getting this article? And I'm not going to sit there and go like, oh, well, probably what's happening is magic or blah, 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 blah. It's a tremendous coincidence. And that's what it is, because we don't know what other things other factors may have played into it. But I'm not going with magic.
You know why that's not a coincidence? Because if I purchase something on Google that I've never purchased before, all of a sudden, when I log on to Facebook, that item is suddenly there. So what you're saying to me, I'm sorry, is nonsense.
I don't think you understood my example. I said it in conversation.
No, I understood your example, but I don't think
in conversation. And then the algorithm. All I am saying is coincidences can have natural explanations. And all you have given us is a child pointed and said the name Eddie. And why? What explanation could I have?
Can you explain this to me then, please?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a tragic story. Years ago, 2 young children died in an house fire next door to me.
Mm-hmm.
And after their passing, new people moved into the property, and things would suddenly move into the cupboards or disappear into thin air. How can that be explained?
Anecdotal stories just don't land too hard for me. Like, I mean, there's several different. No. So, are you telling me right now? Hold on, gas. Are you telling me right now that there's a way that you can verify for me that nobody moves shit around? That personally, as a firsthand eyewitness, nobody went in, and you can absolutely say nobody moved shit around. Just like with the kid, can you absolutely tell me that nobody ever had a picture of this person and said the name Eddie, pointing at it or referencing it or something like that in front of the kid, near the kid, around the kid, or something like that for them to soak it up? And they associated.
We don't even know if it's.
I can tell you that.
We don't even know if the kid had a concept of the picture of Eddie, just the name.
Yeah.
He might have thought he was looking at a purple fucking horse on the stairs named Eddie. We haven't established anything about this Eddie was the stepdad, except it was the name in common. So now you're giving this example of creepy supernatural things happening to that are going to be based on the reports they're telling you, and maybe some things you had happen to you. And I'm sitting here going like,
I'm an agnostic.
I get it. And you're asking me, how do I explain it? Any natural candidate explanation.
And all you get, it's antidotal. That's nonsense.
How is that nonsense? That is the basis upon which most people present their argument. You said, how would I explain it? I can't explain anything I didn't witness myself and can't investigate. But I can give candidate... Stop, Gaz. Gaz, stop. No, I didn't say I can't explain it. I'm saying I can't give you a direct answer to something uninvestigatable, but I can do this. I can present candidate explanations, and we can put a comparison likelihood on something as a candidate explanation versus a supernatural explanation on the basis of how often has this happened. So for example, Gaz, I'm not saying this is the reality of what happened, but the candidate explanation of the story you just made up is something you pulled out of your actual ass because somebody wrote it down and put it up there and then you read it to us, and is a lie, is still much more likely from to the person you are presenting it than some magic ghost things are happening, as those have never been confirmed a viable candidate explanation. So if you want one, and we're gonna say in good faith, we're saying you didn't pull out of your ass, I could go with somebody's fucking with them and gaslit them, or people who are looking for signs from ghosts because of confirmation bias tend to misinterpret things that may have even been present before, and now they have much larger significance as things shift or move or whatever else. You are sitting here going, yeah, you can't you can't prove my unfalsifiable claim is false. That's the nature of the fucking thing. But I can give you candid explanations and I can weigh their likelihood. I don't believe in ghosts because none of these anecdotes are remotely interesting. And you tried to start off with something that may have been at least testable. And it seems crazy to me that all of these ghosts that might be hyperactive and mad after a fire and stuff, the moment you want to go in with some kind of good investigative equipment to confirm that shit, the ghosts tend to stop chilling out and be moving stuff around and be so mad all the time.
Jimmy, you were as thick as the mole on your ass.
I'm a stick with the moron I am?
I said you're as thick as the mole is on your ass.
I'm as thick as the motors on my arm.
The mole is on your ass.
I'm as thick as the mole. Well, it's a freckle, and so it's extreme. It's actually the
and it's
the
on his asshole.
Only a couple layers
right.
of epidermis, so it would actually be relatively very thin. But I will point out to you that I just gave you a rather lengthy and comprehensive explanation, and you resorted to an ad hominem.
Explosive diarrhea for the rest of your life.
Okay, well, it's not going to happen because I'm cholestyramine. It bulks up the bile in my stomach. I'm almost incapable of diarrhea right now. So far, guys, it sounds like I've completely debunked the bullshit you just said. And all you have to say in return is, no, you bellend.
I know some. I can tell you something you can't debunk.
You've already told me things I can't debunk because you've given me unfalsifiable claims. I can tell you something you can't debunk, Gaz.
No.
Right now, there is a magic invisible wizard controlling everything you say, but the spell, the way it works is you think you're coming up with all of it. You can't debunk that.
No.
Unfortunately, the strings go through the butt. You have Dumbledore in your butt, just so you know. You can't debunk it.
I can tell you something you can't debunk, which is 1,000,000% fact.
Pizza equals cat.
You ready to hear it?
Are you about to reveal your language was your accent was bogus the whole time, or are you going to drop a slur? Which way are we going?
No. Are you ready for me to drop something you can't debunk? 1,000,000%.
All right, but this is if we can debunk it sufficiently, you're getting dropped immediately. How does that sound, Jimmy?
Oh, I doubt he's actually saying anything real. I think he's going to drop some kind of poor Welsh humor.
Right. If I can't debunk what I'm due to say, no, you can drop the call. But if I
could drop the call before. Why are you trying to edge me?
No.
Hey, real quick, before you do it, I just want to do this. Hey, Arden, no, not yet. Arden, will you go ahead and take off M? You know what I mean?
Yep. You're good.
Okay, it's done. All right, go ahead. Tell us. I'm ready for the big reveal. Oh, you know what's so fun about that, Gaz, is I knew you were going to do some kind of shitty thing. And you know how you were like really excited that in front of thousands of people, they were going to hear you say something bigoted? I took it away from you and I muted you to the master before all of it. No one heard what you said. Only John and I. Oh, poor little Gaz wanted to just jump in with a little bit of transphobia right there at the end. Wanted to see if they could, and it was just, Gaz. I've never seen somebody lose as ineloquently as you. Now, granted, you are Welsh, so you already eloquence is not exactly your people's export. But even if we adjusted it to like a language that doesn't sound like somebody is constantly chewing, you know, like if you were to like put a whole, like, remember those gum tape? If you put the whole gum tape in your mouth, even if you didn't sound like you had a mouthful of gum tape, it would have still just been the most ineloquent way I've ever seen somebody just totally lose. Here are the candidate explanations. They are much more likely than it being goes, oh, you're just thick as the mole on your ass. Oh, you're just a dum-dum. And then you tried to get your little transphobia in there at the end, and you got nothing. You lost. You lost. All fun. All right. Well, we can go ahead and turn that back on, Arden.
Already done.
Thank you. Here we go. Last one. We're talking to Brian in Texas. Brian, you are on the line with Jimmy and John. How's it going, Brian?
I'm good. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. First of all, thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. Also, thank you for talking about a subject that you guys probably didn't expect to talk about tonight. So,
we always expect trans stuff to come up every show, even though we have a trans dedicated show by trans people each week. It just happens. It happens constantly. So don't you worry about that.
Yeah. Okay. Also, just to let you know, I'm just really in this for the discussion here. I'm not interested in calling you names or
talking about the mole on my ass.
I'm genuinely interested in the discussion. So, I wanted to talk about the trans ideology, and I think you had said before that you used to think that it was an ideology and you don't anymore. But I wanted to talk about that, and
I think it's more. I used to use the phrase trans ideology, and now that phrase is loaded up. Depending on how you describe ideology, the definition of ideology doesn't really. Just the word ideology alone, it doesn't really fit universally. The concept that trans people exist, the gender spectrum, the sort of psychological and scientific basis, you wouldn't consider a type of ideology. If you want to say that there is a trans ideology referencing the seeking of equal rights for trans people and describe that as trans ideology, then certainly I would concede that ideologies are generally collections of ideas that sort of direct political theory. And in that case, you could use it. Nobody's using that way. People are trying to use the term ideology to more mean like a religious belief, that it's a sort of almost even faith-based belief, because they want it to be equivalent to Christian ideology, not like, you wouldn't use the term to say like depression ideology when talking about some sort of psychological term, for example.
Well, let me just get into why I think it is an ideology. And basically, there's a couple different pathways to trans. So I'm not necessarily talking about people who have autogynephilia, and then they adopt trans ideology as a way to, convert.
I think you're going to need to take a step back and define ideology if you're going to go down this route, broski.
So it's just, it requires belief in something. So like if you look at homosexuality.
The term ideology is, wait. So the term of ideology just means you believe in something?
Well, let's not get hung up so much on the term here. Let's just.
Absolutely, we're going to get hung up on the term. Defining terms is actually a pivotal part to both conversation and debate. So why would we not define the central term to the topic you are calling in about?
Okay, so
you're telling me you're going to defend trans ideology does exist and that it is an ideology, and I say, okay, what is an ideology separate from it? And you don't want to tell me?
Okay, it's a system of ideas, right? That's an ideology.
That's not the term. Okay, sure. Yeah. So do you believe you're heterosexual?
I mean, I am, but that's the point.
Okay, do you have an idea that you are heterosexual?
Homosexuality doesn't require belief. It doesn't.
Are you practicing? Of course it does. Of course it does. No, what do you mean it doesn't? What? Do you believe you're heterosexual?
Well, I am, but homosexuality doesn't require.
But do you believe you are?
And it
What do you?
doesn't require anyone else.
You don't know how words work, and you want to sit here and talk about trans ideology. Of course, you believe you are. You could say no, but knowledge is a subset of belief. I know I'm heterosexual. Fine, that's still a belief.
We're keeping it civil. I'm not here to insult you.
Where have I gone uncivil?
I'm just telling you, you're saying I don't know how words work. Or
correct. You are not using the terms correctly that you are in here. For example, you just said ideology is just a system of ideas, which is not the way that it is used at all. And you are now being pedantic and trying to deny to prove the point that you are too broadly using the term because you're trying to get ahead of me and where it's going to go.
Trans ideology requires that a person believe that there's a metaphysical sex and a biological sex.
Incorrect.
And
no, what?
Hang on.
That doesn't even make sense.
Hang on, Arden, do you believe there's a metaphysical sex?
No.
Oh, well, the trans woman who is present doesn't believe in a metaphysical sex, and yet I believe you would describe Arden as accepting trans ideology. Which way are you going to show you know how words work next, Brian?
So they believe that there is a biological sex. Sex that's not biological.
Gender.
No.
She believes in.
I'm sorry. I know that I'm just some cis white hick here from North Alabama, but like you're trying to equivocate gender with some kind of sex so that you can force gender as a sex attribute, which is just not. Am I wrong about this? Like that's what he's doing.
How would he know? He doesn't know what's right.
The purpose of the whole point of someone who is trans is that their biology, they believe their biology doesn't match their I mean, I don't know how else to say it besides the metaphysical sex, the way they think of themselves.
Well, then if you don't know how, hang on, Brian, I'm glad you just said that you don't know how else to say it because you are actually making my same point. You don't know how else to say it, even though those terms, Brian, don't interrupt. You don't need to. Brian, the reason you don't know how to say it is because you are so ill-informed on this that you don't know that this language is readily available and 101 class level shit.
Does a transgender person believe their gender is different than their biological sex? Yes.
What is, first of all, biological sex? That wasn't the term you made. You wanted us to concede to metaphysical sex.
Yes. The way they use gender is their metaphysical sex. It's something that cannot be measured.
There is no such thing as a metaphysical. That's not, what are you talking about? Metaphysical does not refer to all things which cannot be measured.
A trans person believes that their biological sex does not match their what?
Is depression a metaphysical experience?
Their gender, right? Their biological
Is depression a metaphysical experience?
No.
Is depression metaphysical?
Their biological sex.
Is depression metaphysical? I can keep repeating myself too, and we'll only proceed once you answer mine. Is depression metaphysical?
No, there's actual.
Is happiness metaphysical?
No.
Oh, so what you're describing are things which can't be measured, but can only be the reported experiences of individuals, and yet they're not metaphysical.
Happiness can be measured. Depression can be measured.
Give me the unit of measurement.
But anyways, regardless.
Oh, I would say but anyways and try to get off of there real quick too.
You haven't answered my question. You're the one avoiding
I don't care about your question. Your question is real dumb.
The question is dumb if a transgender person believes that their biological sex doesn't match their gender. That's a dumb question.
If we have to still concede that gender means metaphysical sex, yeah.
Yeah, so you're trying to define gender.
Go ahead.
I'm not
Sorry.
asking you to concede that.
No, Brian. Can we? Are you agreeing that you were trying to equivocate gender with this quote unquote metaphysical sex, which is not a real thing? That's something that's been made up for the purposes of this call. Are you agreeing that gender is not metaphysical sex? Is that are we agreeing to that so that we can move forward?
I was implying that the way gender is used is implied as a metaphysical sex. Because gender
No, it's not.
Totally on
No, it's
biology.
not. No, you're trying to force the word sex into the conversation when it's really about gender.
A transgender person is generally going to be a person whose gender identity is not coherent with whatever they were assigned at birth by whatever doctor told them out.
No one is assigned a sex at birth.
Yes, you absolutely are, because your chromosomes are, yes, you are, because there are lots of people, even if we get rid of every example of trans people, there are people whose chromosomal existence does not match what gets up on their birth certificate. There are people with penises with XX, and there are people with vaginas with XY. So yes, you absolutely are assigned at birth, and it is on a very basic level investigation of the genitals of a person.
No, their sex is identified as what it is.
Incorrect. Okay, let's say no transgender people exist. Let's say you're right that transgenderism is incorrect or whatever you want to go with. Are there or are there not people who have X, Y chromosomes and yet no male main characteristics? They don't have a penis, they don't have balls, and yet they have XY chromosomes.
I'm not saying that there are people. I'm not saying that there are not people that think that their gender doesn't match their biological sex.
We're not talking about think. I'm saying let's have people whose brains never even turn on. If you go and investigate right now, by any definition of sex, could you actually figure out a person's sex purely based on investigating their body with no additional testing, even if you went to a limited... What is a male? To you, Brian, what defines a male?
A male is someone who has evolved to produce sperm. A female is someone who has evolved to produce eggs.
Great. And when you are born, stop. When you are born, how do they investigate whether or not you evolved to produce sperm?
Well, most of the time, 99.9% of the time, they can just
see. This is the problem. You're already changing, and so what? So for those people who that 99% doesn't work, the other 1%, are they given a sex? Also, is a sex recorded on their birth certificate too? Based on that same investigation. For example, would a person with gonads, with a person with hidden gonads and an unexpressed would a person who's, are you, bro, shut the fuck up. Shut up when I am talking. You just can't stop. Because your whole point is you aren't assigned a sex at birth that is identified. And then you yourself said it works for 99% of the people, which I don't know if the number is 99, but most people would agree with that. It is most people, their sex is identified. And that if you look at their genitals, you're probably going to figure out which this term biological sex is a hilarious term. But of course, when we're saying sex, we're talking about biological sex. We're not talking about fucking the doctor. We know what you mean. That most of the time it's going to be the case, but you are still assigned it at birth based on that, and any additional testing that could uncover that your story isn't actually quite so simple. And by the way, a significant portion of those people who evolved to produce sperm will also have evolved some genetic condition which prevents them from actually delivering those sperm. So even within your own definitions, there is a large spectrum. And this is before we even get to whether or not trans people exist. Brian, we're at the end of the show. It's 9:52. Call back the Transatlantic Call-In Show. You can literally talk to doctors, politicians, people who are like, this is what they do. But please, for the love of fucking the God you probably believe in.
Whenever they have a difference, whenever they feel like there's a difference between a gender and their biology, why is it that it's always the biology that's wrong?
Why is it that you thought you were going to get it? First of all, a lot of people, this is, Brian, you're continuing. Brian, you are continuing. Brian, shut the fuck up. I'm trying to answer your question, but I'm going to start with, you are continuing to ask questions because you haven't bothered on Google. Because guess what? A lot of trans people also believe there are biological elements to the fact that they are transgender. They don't think it's a purely mysterious thing that they got through. And there's lots of proposals on different reasons why you might experience things like dysphoria. And of course, there are in the past other experiments that have shown interactions with different types of brain matter and the like. When you're saying it's not biological, what you mean is there isn't a penis and I want one, or there is a vagina and I don't. That's not the pure limitation of what would be biological or anatomical. You need to do basic level of listening to people other than, I don't care about your point, and I don't care about you fucking talking over me, Brian. You are getting basic level shit so wrong. A biologist would be embarrassed even if they are anti-trans for some of the dumb shit you are saying. Stop listening to ridiculous people on podcasts being like, hey, by the way, here with my penis, which should be the most important thing to everybody in the world, here's what I think about the trans shit. And maybe first approach it with empathy and people going through fucking shit and be full of gratitude that you don't have to go through it, and then go start learning the fucking actual basics from actual authorities on the matter. And then once you do all that, call back and shut the fuck up when you're being spoken to and your questions are being answered. Thank you for waiting on the line long enough for me to say fuck off, go away.
So one of the root
But one of the, like, I can tell you weren't even listening to that because you were loading up the next fucking point. Go read a goddamn book. Jesus Christ, there are those things in that library Gaz was talking about. Was it Gaz who said, no, it's the other guy who was long-winded about nothing.
Yeah.
Shut the fuck. Was
There's an answer to every single, well, no, not necessarily. I think you were on a good path. There was an answer to every single thing he said. The only thing I wanted to object to was he brought up autogynephiles as a way to be trans. This is a thoroughly discredited typology, extremely old. Typologies in general are not really like accepted in like good science, at least not the way that one is presented. So no, he's just totally full of absolute bullshit.
I think I reacted to him saying it almost as like we're only at the beginning of the call, so I'm going to let him keep going, but we've already hit a fucking wall of absolute ignorance. This dude's brain is redacted. All right, people.
So my main problem with it was that he immediately started off trying to equivocate terms, and as a way to like force like a sex sort of centered view of the conversation. As
let's not forget him also trying not to define terms that he wanted to say. The term was the problem. Right. He called in saying his problem was with me saying I don't use gender ideology anymore. And then I defined why and expressed it and been like, there are legitimate ways you could. Nobody does. These are dog whistles. The phrase trans ideology. There is a trans ideology surrounding a political movement to get trans people rights, but it isn't the core of why trans people claim to exist, because anything which has a political theory to it is separate from the thing itself. Just as you could say there's white ideology. I believe the Proud Boys are the ones going forward with that. And yet to be white, I need not be a member of the white ideology people. It's just, learn what the words fucking mean. It was such basic level shit. I'm like, bro, I have to handhold through it's not like you're asking the question in good faith. You're asking it oppositionally. You're trying to like set it up with this phrasing where it's like, and how could, and to where it's, we would have to go back to the basics you are missing to correct how dumb your question is in the first place. I'm not even opposed to debating a fucking transphobe, but for sure a transphobe here's my deal, Brian. Here's how you can test it. You go to different anonymous forums on the internet and see if you can debate in favor of what you call trans ideology so well that you blend in and people don't realize that you aren't an exceptional debater at it. Only then do you have a chance at being. The thing about I think everybody who works at the line, and I hope we are using it too. I hope this is true of me as well. I think everybody here, to everything that they debate on the basis of, they could debate in a way that they could blend into their opposition as an elite. If you didn't know who I was, I think I could debate as a Christian, as a Republican, as a conservative, as a fucking sexist, as a misogynist, as a broverse. I think I could convince people easily that I am a good debater on their side. And I think everybody here, for the various topics they hit. The person who says in the chat, using redacted is basically the same as actually using the slur, in my opinion, just saying, sure, fine. But the actual, as far as words go, clearly the thing we police is whether or not a person says the word or not. That's literally, I mean, because literally the internet is covered in bullying and people suggesting things, and we've just changed. It also means the exact same thing. The way I now use the word idiot is the way I would have used the R word back then. You're being a fucking idiot. But we're not policing those things. Some people do, because idiot, that comes from idiot savant, blah, 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 blah. Clearly it is about if you use the actual specific word. So I have no opposition to you saying that. You are correct. It is with the exact same spirit that I used to use that word. But the reason I'm not using that word is because that is the word that is not allowed. I got nothing else to say to, but people have been saying that in comments recently. I'm like, yeah, yep, correct. But it's not as bad because it's literally not that word. John, you don't have to agree. I just think it's still, I think the language, please, I think it's good that we set clear boundaries down. I'm glad that a lot of people, white people from Wyoming like myself, started using the word dude instead of the N word, because I was one of those dumb libertarians back in the day. We white people have to make that word not so bad by casualizing it. Of course it's, I mean it with the same spirit of how I would have meant it if I had just used the R word some time ago. Go learn to debate as your opposition before you actually start. I don't think that guy would have been able to get through, like, Jesus Christ. We should have asked him to do that, actually. We should start asking him, like, all right, when we had Arden here, we could have said, Arden, he's going to explain this concept. You tell me on a scale of, A, B, C, D, E, and F, how well he's articulated this concept. And I think Arden would have done it in good faith and would have, if he actually nailed it, I think she would have said, like, he did maybe a B, he did maybe an A. I don't know.
I don't think that particular caller would have failed miserably. The second you start accusing us of making metaphysical claims when we're talking about, like, brain states, like, okay.
Yeah, the only reason I probably wouldn't have given him an F on any of it was because he wasn't Welsh. That's the only reason. It's okay to be racist against Welsh people. I'm pretty sure I'm like 40% Welsh or something crazy. Yeah. Well, I can call us Welshies. Welshers. Oh. I don't know if it's 40%. It's like I think it's maybe like 25. I know I've got a lot of Welsh in me, and I've asked him to remove himself. Ayo! This has been the Sunday Show After Dark. John, where can people find you?
Oh, I'm over at on YouTube as Godless Engineer. Just come on over, subscribe. I've got a lot of great shit coming down the pipe. So just come on over and have some fun.
I like when the shit comes down the pipe. It's way worse when it goes back up. Jimmy Snow is my channel. It's my name. That's how you remember it. And we're gonna start doing call-in vertical streams, so where you can watch it on your phone like this. Clips will go out still in horizontal if everything goes well, but that's a thing that's coming up, and I think we're going to start doing our first sort of test shows this week. So if you want to make sure you don't miss that, you go subscribe over on the Jimmy Snow channel. If you're like, is this the right channel? It feels like they've only posted twice in like a year. Yeah, that's me. That's the right one. That's the right one. Bum, bum, bum. It's got like 350,000 subscribers. That's the other way you would know.
Are we good?
It used to be quite active.
I'm so confused.
Now I'm vamping.
Okay, I couldn't tell if you were done or not. I was like,